Hello, everyone. My name is John Ferretti. I'm one of the co-founders of the Local 100 Fightback Coalition in New York City. It's a rank and file coalition of transit workers in TW Local 100. And we're coming to you tonight to provide a live stream kind of talking about the stakes of the 2024 U.S. presidential elections and the overall U.S. elections, and also to provide kind of a watch party of the debate tonight, so that we can, in real time, respond to some of the developments in the debate. But to begin, I want to introduce some of our guests. Joining us tonight is Dina Ferretti, my wife, who is a union member of Local 1199 SEIU. She's works for Mount Sinai in the Hospital Workers Union. So, and we're also joined by coalition member Anthony Steiniger, train operator in the B division, who you all know and have seen many times on our coalition live streams. So I want to try to frame the stakes of the election by showing a short video that gives a synopsis of what Project 2025 is about. And if for those of you who don't know, Project 2025 is a plan, a 920-page plan put out by the Heritage Foundation and 100 other conservative groups, conservative activist groups and think tanks, with like a hit list of the things they want Trump to do if elected. And it's basically like a step-by-step, no holds barred plan for fascism in the United States. But I'm going to let the video give you a much wider detail on it. The video is about 5 or 6 minutes, and I hope that will help frame the discussion, and then we're going to start a wider discussion. Seth Rosenberg is going to be joining us shortly, and we have a number of other guests who are supposed to be joining us. But we'll keep you up to date on that once they get on the stream. So let me just share my screen and start to play that video. All right, so
that little tangent aside, let's get back to the goals of Project 2025. We talked about the boring stuff, wanting to gut the administrative state, but what else is in there? It's 920 pages after all. They've got to have some other ideas. Well, a lot of it is what you might expect. As Trump stated on numerous occasions, they want to kick the cultural Marxists out of the Department of Education, demolish the deep state, and combat woke ideology at all levels of government. They plan to do this by making extensive use of Schedule F, a piece of legislation established at the federal level by Trump, which allows the president to fire federal government officials at will, presumably for not sufficiently bending the knee. The project calls for an executive branch with essentially unchecked power, making the president basically unaccountable to Congress. They want to dismantle the liberal system to build one more favorable to conservatives. That means scrapping environmental protections, moving away from globalism, punishing corporations for DEI language, which is funny because it sounds like they actually think these corporations genuinely believe their DEI statements. They want to escalate tensions with China by ending economic engagement entirely, crack down on immigration, criminalize LGBT expression. They claim that any talk of gender, gender identity, and so on is pornography and should be banned, and has no First Amendment protections. They want to scrap labor discrimination policies, quote, maintain a biblically based, social science reinforced definition of family, meaning scrap protections for same-sex marriage, and plan to, quote, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, unless, of course, you're one of the aforementioned groups they intend to criminalize out of existence. In that vein, to touch very briefly on their views on pornography, if you read the text, they basically just mean any discussion of gender, abortion, or any identity other than straight and cisgender. They want all instances of this kind of language stripped from society. While it's a little cliche to compare the conservatives to Nazis, you know what books were the first to be burned? Which institutions were the first to be shuttered? Books on gender and sexuality, and institutions that studied these topics. But okay, we know elected conservatives are like one step removed from outright fascism at this point. But how are they justifying this? Yes, we all know they just forced this stuff through if they could. But at least for now, they still have to play by the rules of Western liberalism. So the key to their plan is to lean on unitary executive theory, which dates back to the devil himself, Ronald Reagan. In a nutshell, this political theory suggests that maybe having 3 separate but equal branches of government isn't a good idea, and that instead, the executive branch should dominate the relationship. Reagan's team came up with this notion to help facilitate deregulation, and it kind of just stuck. Every president since Reagan has made use of this theory to wield just a little bit more power than they probably should have. Bush Jr. justifying his invasion of Iraq, Obama justifying widespread US deployment overseas, Trump's Muslim ban, and so on. Now, the Project 2025 ghouls want to make sure the president has essentially unchecked power, that Congress cannot prevent the president from doing what they want to do, however heinous their pet projects may be. There's a whole conversation about unitary executive theory in government circles. People are writing books about it and having very important conversations with very smart people. And you know what? That's what makes this so scary. The Republicans talk a big game about destroying cultural Marxism or waging war on woke, but that's just bluster. When they start coming up with justifications within the liberal framework, the Democrats will cave like they always do. Every single time we see them play ball with the far right, they cede a little more ground each time. Then you get a president like Biden, who just straight up accelerates the process by speeding up border wall construction, approving a record number of oil drilling permits, and then when he inevitably loses because everyone is upset with him, the Project 2025 people swoop in and the Democrats just go along with it because it's technically legal. Not to do it again, but most fascists throughout history have come into power through technically legal means. And then they change what's legal so you can't get them out again. Well, that's all pretty.
Okay, I'm going to pause the video there. That's just enough to give a short synopsis of what Project 2025 is. And by the way, just so you know, this is not the only witch's brew of attacks that the right wing has mapped out. Trump has his own plan called Agenda 47. And if you're so inclined, you can go to his website and see unhinged videos of Trump railing about what he plans to do in his first and his second term on his website. And they're all like 12, 14 minutes long. So they go into a great amount of detail of exactly how he's going to exact revenge on his enemies and suppress democracy. So at this point, just wanted to kind of open up the discussion. And I thought that it would be interesting to have a perspective that's not often heard on our coalition live streams. You know, our coalition has very a long time of political activism, a long time of union activism. So we have very specific ideas about what we think some of the solutions are. But there's a whole bunch of people in society, in our society, who feel like they don't have any hope that real change can happen. And part of that is because of, in Adina's case, the George Floyd protest that we were both part of, and the kind of protest that shook the world and involved millions and millions of people in struggles for real change against systemic racism. And despite all of that struggle, not much has really changed. Adina, I would describe her as what the media is now calling a double hater. She hates both Trump and Biden, and with good reason. So I thought it would be good to start off with Adina about some of her thoughts about the election, because it gives an idea of what people outside of the bubble that we find ourselves in politically are thinking. So Adina, the floor is yours if you want to just talk about what you think about the stakes of the election and just general thoughts about the state of the country and what's going on.
Okay, guys, how you doing? My name is Dina Ferretti, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm just gonna talk how I feel. I'm not just gonna try to make it up, but just how I feel. I'm not on the side of Trump, and I'm not on the side of Biden, because I just don't see any tangible way of my life getting better. Every time I look around, the food price is going up, the rent is going up, everything is just going up. People can hardly buy things. Children can hardly move out, on their own. Things are just not going good. There's nothing like you can grab on and says, oh my goodness, this is going to work for me and to make my life feel good. Matter of fact, a lot of people are depressed, even at work. They're like, oh my God, I'm sad, So, John and I was talking just before I came on, and we were like, to me, Biden is like suppressively bad, and Trump is just like in your face bad. So which one is worse? Is like a physical assault worse, or a mental assault worse? So both is just bad. And I think that Biden is just old and weak and just falling all over the place. And I think that Trump,
Don't hold back.
he's I think that Trump is he just wants clout. Like he wants to be like a social influencer. So they're both struggling, I think, for the black vote. And Trump is basically saying, hey, that song with Drake and the other guy, Kamar, or whatever his name is. And he's just like, they're not like us. So Trump is like, hey, I got locked up. So all the black folks should come to me because, hey, guys, I'm like you guys. Look at me. I'm like you guys. And Trump is like, hey, y'all not like us. Y'all not like us. Come over here. And Biden is like, yeah, well, my son got locked up too. So everybody's just fighting for the black vote. And that's not the main thing, but that's just for show and clout and to, be like, oh my God, I think a lot of people are going to be watching to say, oh my God, what is Trump going to say that's going to make my life happy today? He's going to say, we're going to build a wall. We're going to, the catchy slogan. It's just Trump is going to be like, what Trump is going to say? Oh, ha, like that. And Biden don't have nothing to say.
Well,
and got for things that he's supposed to say. So it's just, I don't know. No hope is there.
Well, we completely understand the lack of hope that a lot of people have, and this is a terrible choice. Like nobody's going to sugarcoat this. We're not Biden stands. We don't support. We're not enthusiastic Biden supporters. We're not going to sugarcoat any of his crimes, any of his basically being the arms dealer for genocide and the blood-soaked imperialist policy that he's pursued, not just as president, but even when he was in the Senate. But at the same time, like part of what has been lost is the stakes in the election in terms of, you were saying that Biden is kind of like a mental attack and Trump is kind of like a physical attack. Well, we have to kind of focus on the differences, right?
But then also, John, not to interrupt you, but also like, with Roosevelt and all the other presidents, there was something, they provide Medicaid, they provide social services, they provided something that was going to help the economy.
Yeah.
These two people are not saying nothing with social economy. Like even Obama came on with the Medicare for all, but something for the economy.
Well, no. Obama wasn't Medicare for all. He was Obamacare. Medicare for all was Bernie Sanders.
Sorry, but I'm just saying that, what is going to bring everybody together, strengthen everybody, give something that the working class can, unite together to say, okay, this is what we want. And to make the economy better,
Yeah.
The greatest thing was when they had the Social Security that can help people, when they get older. Medicaid it's getting wiped out. Medicare is getting wiped out. All the things that were great for the economy are great for people is just being rolled back. And neither Biden or Trump are saying, hey, this is what I have to offer for the people. They're
right.
Nothing.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. But at the same time, we need to be conscious of the fact that Biden is basically saying, we're not going to do anything for you and you'll get the same shitty Medicare, Medicaid, or the programs you currently have. What Trump is saying is, we want to gut Medicaid. We want to savage these programs and we want to give that money in tax bailouts to the rich. We want to put the billionaire class directly in control of gutting our democratic rights. So there are differences. And then the other difference is that Biden doesn't have a social base that's out in the streets ready to engage in violence against people, whereas Trump actually represents a growing antisocial white supremacist movement that is willing to use any means, as we see in
So
January
I'm
6th.
supposed to pick from the mediocre? I'm supposed to pick from nothing. I'm not picking. There's nothing on the tree to pick from. There is
Well, no,
absolutely nothing on this tree to pick from.
it's not about picking things that we like. It's not a whether we morally support one or the other. It's about self-defense at this point. It's about survival. It's about doing what we can to prevent the worst outcomes, harm prevention. Unfortunately, this is a really bad time politically because the working class is not mobilized. It would be different if the working class was mobilized in their thousands in the street, making demands, fighting for the things that we need. But we see in our own unions, like we don't even have control of our own democratic institutions. And these democratic institutions have done not fucking like Trump, the rise of Trump and fascism. And so that's why we feel weak. So I understand everything that you're saying, and I relate to it. We all do. But the question of just throwing up your hands and not using the democratic rights that you do have to stop the worst outcome, is that in the interest of our class? And will that have even worse consequences? Is the question.
But John, you said that last year too. You said that last year. You said that the year before.
Last election.
Yes, and you said, okay, we can't stand aside and not do anything because, hey, we got to pick one. We got to pick the lesser of the evil. But
well, that's not exactly
worse.
That wasn't exactly my argument. My argument was we have to pick our enemy for the next 4 years, and we want a weaker enemy who is not currently inciting insurrection and white supremacist violence to destroy our democratic rights. So it's about choosing what weapon is in the hands of your enemy. That's what your vote is about, in my opinion. At this particular point in American history, that's what I think it's about. Seth has his hands up and wants to intervene, so go ahead.
Yeah, interesting debate. I think it's, and I think it sets the stage pretty well. Like, I don't think there's anyone of the four of us here who's not a double hater, right? I mean, I hate both of them. And it's important to note that, Dina, John and I have worked together for a long time. We're both revolutionary socialists. We believe in the overthrow of capitalism by working people, with a revolutionary party. The question is, how do you get there? And you were talking about, there's one thing I want to disagree with to sort of set the stage of what I want to say, which is there's part that I agree with. You were talking about really important programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You talked about them as if they came from presidents and politicians. And that's only true at the surface level. That's the way they like to talk about history. But the fact is, all of those things came from us, right? Yeah, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, overtime, the weekend. Those were all things that working people fought for, right?
Yes, I agree.
And only in the 1930s with the New Deal and Roosevelt that you mentioned, he only gave those things when there were massive strikes that took over entire cities during that time.
Yes.
And so for me, as someone who believes that working people need to rise up and take the power and use our power both to win us better working conditions and better programs and create a new world where it's not for profit. How in this election is there a difference through which we have a better chance of standing up and fighting back? Right now, to be honest, we're not in a position to win new things. We're barely holding on to the things that we have right now. Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to say about John and I is John and I come from a tradition where for years and years, 20 years, we didn't vote for either party, right? When it was, Romney versus Obama, or, even the first time around, Clinton versus Trump, we were saying, oh, both parties are the same. And I think for a while, there wasn't enough difference to matter. And I'll connect this up to the stuff about working people and us rising up in a second. But I think that things have changed. I think Trump has really accelerated and exacerbated the white supremacy in this country to the point now where it's actually a rising fascist movement. And for me, as someone, going all the way back, I didn't once, the second term of Bill Clinton was when I stopped voting basically for the Democrats for president. And I feel like, as someone who is a double hater, who really believes that both parties in the end are our enemy, that there is a difference now. And the difference is that if we believe that working people have the power to stop fascism, to stop the attacks on women, to stop the attacks on gays, stop the attacks on migrants, and to try and win a better world and stop that violence, and stop, for me as a anti-Zionist Jew, to stop the genocide in Palestine, that I have to look at it not as, do I like either of these people, because I hate them both, right? But is one of them in power going to give us a better chance of organizing and fighting back versus the other? And I think when you look at history and you look at the type of movements that MAGA is part of, right, which are fascist movements, right? January 6th proves that, the mass shootings that have been done, the calls for violence, attacks on, government agencies by MAGA, that this is a real danger, and that if they get into power, then if, I take my wife and kids, we go out and protest against Israel and in favor of Gaza, right? Those protests will be very different if Trump wins, because all the people who vote for him, millions, like tens of millions of people who support him, those people are armed. And those people, if Trump wins, it will be a symbol to them that they are rising up. Mm-hmm. And anytime that we go out and protest, or anytime workers go out on strike, they will be there, right, to hurt us.
Yes,
that's what's happening. And so with that, I feel like even though we're talking about a sitting president who is a center-right president, whose policies have all been pro-corporate policies for the most part, right, with a few bones thrown, who's arming and funding genocide. That's who Joe Biden is, right? Even with that, right, if we call for a vote for him, it doesn't mean that we morally support him. It means that we think that if we have to choose who we're going to fight against, that we have the best chance of surviving and keeping what we have and possibly fighting off fascism if he's in power versus Trump is in power. And I'll have more to say in the evening, but that's the framing that I like to frame it as. It's not a lesser evilism argument, right? Because I don't look to them as the people who are going to either help or hurt us, right? Or help us actually progress. But the power, the potential power rests with us. And we, one last thing to say is that we are not saying, just focus on the election. Don't build in your unions. Don't build a movement against Israel in favor of to stop the genocide in Gaza. We are, John and Anthony and I and Local 100 Fight Back and everyone we connect with are doing that every day, right? But right now, we can tell that we're not winning, and we need time, because if Trump and MAGA go in, then a lot of that is going to be broken up. There'll be violence against people like us. And so keep organizing on the ground, keep doing that, keep telling the truth about Biden and the Democrats, but also recognize that a tactical vote to hold off fascism, it makes a big difference at this point.
I'm just going to have Anthony speak, since you're the only one who hasn't spoken yet. If you could just respond to some of the discussion.
I'm going to turn off my camera since I just got home from work. I'm going to eat dinner. No one needs to watch it.
Okay.
No, we don't
Thanks
want
for
to
saving
watch
up for me.
We don't need to watch it. There is a big difference this election. And I encourage people to familiarize themselves with the aforementioned Project 2025 and what it would mean for our country. As you mentioned earlier, Adina, about the New Deal and President Roosevelt, and what Seth built upon was that nothing in the New Deal came from just because any politician or any president said, "Oh, this is going to be great for the working people." It's because working people organized and they were out in the streets and they demanded it. And a lot of what was built into the government bureaucracy since then is to enforce the New Deal, or to like, take for instance an organization, a government cabinet like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. People years ago, everybody remembers what happened in Flint, Michigan, and it was the fault of the Republican governor at the time that caused Flint water to become contaminated. Now the EPA had to step in. What the a new Trump administration would mean would be a weakening of the EPA, if not an outright abolishment of the Environmental Protection Agency, along with the Department of Education, along with several other departments that will be weakened that help working people. Project 2025 is basically the dream of the billionaires and corporations that they've been having for the past 50 years. And because of what was mentioned in that video that we saw earlier about how each successive president really wanted to expand the powers of the executive branch, and each successive president since Reagan, Democrat or Republican, actually went along with it. So now what we're going to see with a new Trump administration is the wealthy will get their way without anybody to stand up to them. And that's what's going to happen with a new Trump administration. And that's why it's critical that we don't allow Trump to regain office.
But Anthony, I think that somebody is behind all of this, because how could Trump be all the bad things be happening and he's still where he's at today? He's still running for president. If it was a black man, he would have been going to jail. If it was any other race, he had a RICO case. He would be sitting behind bars. But he's here running for president. So I feel someone other than Trump is pushing this behind
Well, they are. The Republican Party and the billionaires who control both parties.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the people who are behind this, and these are the reasons why, and as John mentioned, you have these think tanks that they pay people millions and millions of dollars to frame things in such a way so that people will feel that someone like Trump is working for them. The Heritage Foundation, I'm wearing this shirt, Freedom USA, because these are the things that they wrap themselves in. You have Trump hugging the American flag, at events, and saying he loves our military, when at the same time they want to cut veterans' benefits. At the same time, they want to curtail your freedoms. They want to put restrictions on your right to vote. They want to stop mail in balloting, which is how I voted when I was in the military the entire time. It's the only way most of our service members who are deployed can vote. Yet it's the only way a lot of elderly people can vote. It's the only way a lot of people in rural areas can vote. It's the only way a lot of people with schedules that don't allow them to get to the polls. Election day should be a national holiday the way it is in many other democratic countries, but it's not in our country. But they want to stop mail-in voting. Who are the people that have these type of schedules that can't get them to get to the polls? Poor people, working people, black people, Hispanic people, people who tend to vote their interests where they want to preserve these type of programs like Medicaid, Medicare, unemployment, the Environmental Protection Agency, people who need the Department of Education. Look at what happened when Biden wanted to expand the forgiveness of student loans. See, these are the key differences that are I think people aren't really focusing on, and they're listening to Trump's rhetoric, or they're looking at the fact that Biden is old, he's decrepit, or whatever. At least with the Democratic Party, they pay lip service to at least preserving some of these things there. And with these things still in play, we have more of a chance to organize as labor unions. And as Seth said, we'll be able to protest. Trump even proposed. This is radical and this is crazy. Trump even proposed using the military on American soil against protesters. Not the National Guard, the U.S. Army against protesters. This is insanity. But these are the key differences that people aren't really aware of, and that they need to be aware of, and which was why I encourage people not to pay attention to what he says at these rallies, not to have him bringing old sports stars, with questionable backgrounds like Lawrence Taylor up on stage, to say he's for black people. I mean, that says nothing to me. I want to know what you're going to do. And what you're going to do, what you actually put into print, will harm millions and millions of average, ordinary working Americans, black, white, Hispanic, whatever. But it'll hurt poor black people more than it will anybody else.
But Anthony, what you made a great point when you said, like, Biden tried to get rid of the student loan, which has crippled so much people. I know people at my job paying $800 a month, $500 a month, $600 a month. And some of the people, even at my job, because they worked for the hospital, they were able to wipe out. This mom, she had I don't even know, she had $60,000 on her own student loans, and her son had another, I don't know, 40, 50,000. And they were able to wipe the entire thing out. And I think because she worked for the hospital, so they had that program, and she was able to wipe it out. But she was like, Adina, I just made up my mind for the rest of my life that I was going to be paying back those student loans. But because of the program that Biden had came in with, they wiped out that debt. Some people at my job, the debt was wiped off. Other people, they're still going through the process of wiping it off. But if it had come out and, the people were able to wipe their student, that would have been a big thing, because then they could put that money to housing, vacation, making quality of life. So if Biden was only able to push through that, even for the student loans, just like how Trump was able to take away the working class taxes, the tax refund, I'll tell you about that. It would be a big thing, because my kids, they used to get back like a little $2,000. They could go on vacation. They could do things. They look forward to taxes. Now, each of my kids, they got maybe $300, $200. And if that money they got back, they had to pay the tax return guy the money. So they didn't get back anything. So Trump basically just wiped that clean when he came in and redid the taxes. And I think that if Biden had just helped with the student loans, so many people are struggling with that. If that could have just been a thing, at least somebody would have got something out of that Biden. But we didn't even get back,
Well, he did the bare minimum to try to posture as if he was relieving a student loan debt. But another part of that was the Supreme Court, which is also in the grip of fascist billionaires. Like when they joke about Clarence Thomas having a daddy, they're a billionaire daddy. They're not kidding. Like Harlan Crow, like is bankrolling him, his wife, their house, the trips they take around the world, and he's beholden to them, and they'll do anything they want. And Trump, you were saying why Trump is still around, right? Trump's around because he's a useful vehicle for anger and rage and grievement for very powerful people in this country. He's a vehicle for Peter Thiel and some of these other billionaires, the Jeffrey Yahs of the world, these dot-com billionaires, oil company executives. You've seen in the video they're talking about gutting environmental regulations. When people say, "Oh, Trump has a plan," It's not Trump's plan. It's their plan. It's ghostwritten for him. It's handed to him. And if we look at Trump's last term in office, he actually implemented almost everything in the Heritage Foundation plan. All of the judges were handpicked by him. All the Supreme Court justices were handpicked by him. The policies were handpicked by them.
Yep.
And he was their willing handmaiden and servant. He postures all the time about being this macho man's man. And he's nothing but an errand boy and somebody who will follow the dictates of other people in his class to seek to secure their class interests. And he's weaponizing people's anger and fear. There's a lot of anger in this country, and there's a lot of anger for good reason in this country. Because most people, whether you're a white working class person or even a white middle class person, in a lot of respects, there's a lot of reason for aggrievement and being fucked over and being overall losing in society because of the class dynamics of the society, because of the society being in the strangle grip of the billionaires. But they want to weaponize that anxiety and that justified hatred for the ruling class and the elites to use it as a weapon against those who are actually not the cause of those people suffering, are not the cause of their economic struggling, are not the cause of the fact that maybe they were middle class and they're no longer middle class, and now they're working class, or they have to move to a neighborhood that's a lower income neighborhood because of their economic fortunes are not what they used to be. And that the people who are responsible for that are the very same people who are ghostwriting Trump's policies, are the very people who support Biden as well, the very people who've caused mass suffering onto people after COVID, where the rich, I mean, you were talking about the rising cost of living, right? The inflation. Well, who caused that? Was there some kind of phenomenon that caused it to caused inflation to be higher than it ever was before? It was corporate greed. It was, they deliberately said we could, the market will bear it. They'll pay it. And we have them over a barrel, and we can do it, and we're going to do it. And they implemented that. So there's a lot of people in this country that have forgotten how bad Trump was and are brain broken by the pandemic and are so anxious and angry that they're willing to accept any narrative that says somebody's going to make it better for them. And that's very dangerous when the somebody who's telling you they're going to make it better for you actively hates you and doesn't even see you as human. Like, we've lost the plot, and the media is responsible for that. And who are the media? Billionaire corporations. And they have an interest in Trump being on the main stage because Trump sells. Trump sells because it's outrageous, because it's racist, because it's sexist, because it's not what people normally do in the political realm. And so it's good for them financially. And then the Democrats are corrupt as shit. And Kathy Hochul is as corrupt as anybody else, and they don't want their crimes exposed. So of course they're not going to put Trump in jail. They don't want to put Trump in jail or bring real consequences to the MAGA movement because they're worried about it being a lesson that ruling class figures can be disciplined publicly like this. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Trump is still on the stage. But the main reason is because our class is not mobilized to actually fight in its own name, and they don't fear us. So they are able to weaponize the fear and the anxiety that we have in other directions, which turns inward and turns towards ourselves. And it's very dangerous. Seth, I'm sure you want to get in here. And I know, Anthony, you want to speak first?
Yeah, I just want a couple of things because, the debate is usually to highlight differences between the candidates. And I want to talk about, differences between the parties and what John spoke about, rising fascism, and how we have a rising Christo-fascist movement, and it's spearheaded by Trump. And it's nothing new in this country. In fact, when the Pledge of Allegiance said added one nation under God, it wasn't in the original Pledge of Allegiance. It was added in the 1950s to distinguish us from communism. It was a bit of a propaganda that was added that was meant to groom, if you will, school children to make them think that they were better than the godless communists in a way. And what they're doing now, even though our Constitution says separation of church and state, the school superintendent of Oklahoma just said that all schools, grade 5 through 12, must incorporate the Bible into their school curriculum as a historical document. The Bible, not any other religious document, but the Bible. And this is coming. It's coming from the Republican Party. In Louisiana, they said that the Ten Commandments must be displayed in all public buildings and what have you. And this is coming from the Republican Party. We gotta understand that what they're trying to do is they're trying to give people someone to hate, so that you're not focused on how they are the ones that are going to be taking away your freedoms. And when they talk, they try to wrap themselves in the flag and talk about the Constitution. But on January 6th, Donald Trump, and he still goes around today, and people believe him. He still goes around today saying that his own vice president, who, by the way, is hesitant to support him, who actually ran against him in the primary, which is unheard of. He said that his own vice president didn't have the courage because Mike Pence chose to follow the Constitution and certify the election. You have a person taking the debate stage today who attempted a coup, who attempted to circumvent the Constitution, which hasn't happened in the 240-year history of our country. You have somebody taking the debate stage today who called his vice president a coward because he followed the Constitution. So these are major differences, huge differences. Whether you're on the left, like most of us are, or you're on the right, this is a radical remaking of our government that we're talking about if you elect Donald Trump. It is a radical remaking and it's a fascist. We're seeing parallels now between what happened in the 30s in Nazi Germany. You have someone taking the debate stage tonight who called for a unified right. There is a major difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Yeah, and also I just want to get in here for a second to point out when he talks about Schedule F, right? When they're talking about Schedule F, what that means is that all federal workers, there's hundreds of thousands of federal workers, right? They can all become at-will workers with the signature of his pen. They no longer have any civil service rights. They serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States and can be fired like that. You know, in the history of the union movement, one of the big events was PATCO, right? The firing the air traffic controllers by Reagan. This is PATCO times 1,000 times. And the AFL-CIO has done pretty much not much to mobilize workers in the street. Where are the mass demonstrations about this? Where are the mass demonstrations from our union? You know, they want to talk about, oh, they're the ones that defend unionism. Where's the protest against the wiping out of most of the unionized workers in this country? There's not a peep, not a word. And that's part of the reason why we feel so weak. But it's also why we should know what the stakes are. Like, these are not just garden variety Republican talking points. These are historic attacks that will destroy decades worth of working class struggle. And the question is, if my vote is the difference, and the vote of working class people like me is the difference between that happening and not happening, how can I, as a working class person, not use every tactic and every tool at my disposal to make sure that outcome doesn't come to pass? To give myself more time to organize the kinds of struggles that we're seeing in Bolivia right now, where a coup was attempted by the military and was overthrown by the people in the streets in the general strike. and they ran the military offices. They had to flee from the crowds because there were so many people to fight for democracy. These are the kinds of things we need to see in this country. And it really tells you something about this country with all these pretension about democracy, and we have all these rights. Our rights are vaporized. There was an insurrection on the Capitol, and nothing has changed. There's no protest. It says something about the moral character and the political consciousness in this country, that one, that Trump could run again, two, that he can continue to deny that the election was say that the election was stolen. He can run for office saying he's going to pardon those who engaged in the insurrection, and that he could put forward a laundry list of attacks that would historically got union rights in this country, women's rights, gay rights, etc., and there's no response. So given that balance of forces, if my vote means that doesn't come to pass and we have more time to build those kinds of struggles, you're goddamn right I'm going to use my vote to defend myself and to send a message that we're not going to allow that to happen. But if I'm silent on election day, what message does that send? Will the Democratic Party all of a sudden come to Jesus? Will they realize that they're supposed to be a party of working class people and represent their needs? No, they're going to move to the right. If Trump wins, they're going to get even more right wing. Biden is going to be considered the left wing president compared to who they'll pick next. Because when Hillary lost, what was the response? To blame the left, right? To blame black people for not voting hard enough, to blame young people for not voting hard enough. What do they always do? Do they ever learn the lessons when we don't vote? No. They learn the wrong lessons. And we can't have that, because it's going to put us in a weaker position after whoever's elected, after the election. Seth, I know that you wanted to speak, so that, and Adina, let me know if you want to speak. I'm sure you
I'm happy to let Adina speak before me if she is.
Okay. I can't wait for the debate to come to see what's going on. And Anthony, I think it was Anthony, and John, I definitely agree with you both that there is a big difference between Trump and Biden, because as I said before, one is just in your face with physical violence, and I think one is just suppressed. But there is a big difference, and I don't know how we're going to move past this. So say Biden did win, I have questions, how do we move forward to get a better economic, to have hope for everyone? And as both John and Seth and Anthony, they all said that, it's the people that mobilize to have these, to have our concessions, to have our Medicare, and to have the things that were there. The president just put a rubber stamp, but it was the people. So I think there's three things going on here. You have the Republicans, you have the Democrats, and you have the people. And guess what? We the people, our slogan is "They're not like us." That's what they are. We're against them. You got these two people and the people, and our slogan is "They're not like us." And that's why.
Well,
That's why they don't give us what we want. That's why we don't have Medicare. That's why we don't have, we can't. That's why inflation is up, because they're not like us. They can go buy what they want. They can live in these luxurious homes. Their families. They have great insurance. They have things, And
they have the best of everything. That's part of the reason why Trump is still alive, even though he survives on filet-o-fish. So there's definitely no doubt about the fact that these medical miracles have to do with what they have and what we don't. Seth,
let me try to frame a couple things in a larger framework, like what's going on in our country right now. And the first thing is, just to go back, with respect to people like us, working people, oppressed people, right? We're not in a place now where we are organized enough and we're fighting enough that we can win big things. We're barely holding on to the things that we have, and we have to recognize that. It's not always going to be that way, right? History changes, but we have to be like generals on the battlefield and look to see, right? If you need to jump back in a trench and hold off the oncoming forces for a bit, that's what you have to do. That gives you the best chance.
We got to retreat.
Right. Well, let's try to hold ground before let's try to hold ground, right?
Okay.
I think that's the best thing to try to do. And it's like, it's complicated.
Steph, it seems like it has to get worse before the people come out and fight. It has to get real worse, and then this got us worse, and then everybody's gonna come out and fight.
I hope that's not the case. Like, I hope that's not. I hope that's not the case. Like, I hope, right, we can organize people and fight back and hold on to what we have. We have to try, because the thing is, when things get worse, it's not just they take away a few things, right? It's like they take away your right to protest, and so then you can't fight for you can't fight for things, and you have a long period where we literally get slaughtered, right? And I think that's an important point, that if you want to, like Anthony started the process, and I'd like to continue it. If you want to look at what will happen if Trump wins, look at the states where MAGA is in power, right? Look at what abortion is illegal there, right? They are working to take away the rights to vote for Black people. They are, they're, as Anthony said, they're putting the 10 Commandments and the Bible, forcing people, right, to violate the separation of church and state by putting that in schools. Hopefully that'll get overthrown, but we don't know. But also importantly, right, Governor Abbott in Texas, he pardoned a man, right, who murdered in cold blood a BLM protester, right? This guy was so guilty that he killed a BLM protester, and he was sentenced for murder. He was found guilty of murder in Texas, right? How guilty do you have to be for that to happen? And he was found guilty, and the governor said, this guy's a hero, right? Yeah. So there are multiple states where it's now legal to drive your car into a protest, and if you kill people, right, you can't be prosecuted for it, right?
Florida's one of them.
Now, right?
Florida's
you can also, yeah, Florida's one.
And also in Florida, they're banning books, and they're firing teachers for not teaching, teaching woke ideology by telling
John,
people.
What was that movie that we watched when they remember with Michael G. Jordan, and they banned the books? It was a big thing. You couldn't read.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Famous work from
right, guys? You guys watched that? Anthony, you saw that?
Yeah, Seth is a science fiction guy.
Yeah, I read the book. I read the book when I was growing.
Anthony, you gotta watch that movie. It was real good. Yeah, it was good.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
So
I just want to. I'm sorry. I just want to interject that we're not saying that we don't understand how bad consciousness is in the country, and we're not trying to sugarcoat that. But we know that consciousness comes from struggles, and that there's a whole generation of workers in this country, working class people, who have no cultural memory of what struggles look like. I mean, other than the George Floyd protests recently, or the Arab Spring, there's nothing in their lives they could point to that they were involved in many cases, that won, or that showed the power of our class. And so it's just like on the job, right? Nobody's going to fight the boss individually on their own. The only morons who believe that are the union bureaucrats. They constantly tell us, oh, well, why don't you go fight the boss on your own? If you would just fight the boss, we wouldn't be so weak. And that's why we're not getting what we want, because you won't fight the boss individually. But unions are collective institutions, so we have to organize with other workers in joint struggles where we get to test our power and our strength. And you'll see in a workplace, like I've led work to rule, where there were unsafe conditions, they were closing our pick locations, and I've organized workers to follow the rules and fuck the boss, and show the boss how things work when we implement our will on them. Now, did that mean that I had the majority of workers in that workplace that supported going to war with the boss? No. I had an active minority of workers in that workplace, in that one workplace, who said, this is it. This is the straw that broke the camel's back. We're not taking it anymore. We're going to kick their ass. And other workers followed behind those struggles. And that made it a very powerful struggle. And that forced a situation where bosses were forced to respond. There's many cases like that in the union movement. And it's why, for example, people like Roosevelt gave Medicare and Social Security and the New Deal and all of those programs. They're only going to give us things when they're scared. And workers are only going to go into struggle when they think they can win. Because workers don't think moralistically, they think concretely. Can I win this struggle? Is there a path for us to win this? And can I make my life a little bit better? Can I make my children's life a little bit better? They're not going to march behind the banner of a moral cause unless they're religious fundamentalists or something like that. But in general, they're not gonna be won to things moralistically. They're gonna be won to things by concrete examples. And that's what we have to build much more of. And we don't have to have the majority of working class people do it. We need to have that active minority step forward and show that it's possible. And then people's consciousness changes, because what they see as fixed and never changing begins to change by the action of just a handful of workers in a given location. Look what Amazon workers are doing in terms of fighting against a billionaire bastard like Jeff Bezos. Is that because they have everybody on board? No, they have an active group of organizers who've shown that they can affect production, that they can force them to make concessions. And that little bit of struggle changes the way the workers around them view the world. And that's what we need to see here. And that's what makes all of the things that we need and all the things that you're saying that Biden and others should have been doing if they really believed in the working class and supporting the working class, like, the college loan debt and all of that. That's what makes those things possible, is that change in the balance of forces, which can happen like that. It can happen in an instant, just like the right wing moves towards fascism happen very quickly. It can happen in the other direction, but it's by us not opting out of our role, our labor, our power, and using it. And until that changes, the balance of forces ain't going to change. So I hope that makes it a little clearer. I'm trying to let you know that we're not moral warriors. Like, we're not just reading the 10 Commandments and this is the way the world should be, and just it's morally right, so we should do it. We understand the dynamics of the class struggle. The question is getting other workers to get up off the bench and be involved in those struggles and learn their own lessons and be their own leaders. So I'm going to pause now and allow others to speak who wants to speak. Seth. Oh, yeah. By the way, before you start speaking, we got 10 minutes until the debate goes live. So we're going to have another 5 or 6 minutes of discussion.
Okay. Yeah. So I just want to, frame things like the world, I'll be honest, the world we're living in right now, right, is extremely scary. And we're not winning. And it's, MAGA is a mass movement, right? It's millions of people, mostly white, mostly racist, mostly armed, right? And it's a very dangerous place for us to be in. And why are we here? Well, we live under capitalism. It's a horrible system that oppresses most of the people in our country and in the world, right? It's racist, it's sexist, it's homophobic, it's anti-immigrant. And so, and over time, it's gotten worse and worse, right? It's, it's gone up and down, but the phase we've been in now, since basically there was a boom after World War II, and things have gotten worse and worse. Each economic crisis has made things worse and worse for working people. And now people are getting desperate, right? This middle class that built up after the World War II boom, where unions were strong and jobs were improving and people had pensions, that's all going away. And it went away first for Black people, and it's going away for some white people now. And people are desperate, right? Inflation, right? The pandemic and inflation have raised costs for working people. And just because inflation has gone down doesn't mean the prices have gone down. And so And what has, we're not Biden supporters, right? We're not Democrats. What have the Biden and the Democrats done? Have they provided radical solutions that attack the corporations to stop the corporate greed and to bring prices back down? Price controls or massive benefits for working people to balance that out on the backs of the rich? They didn't do any of that, right? And so people are looking for radical solutions. And when people get desperate and they're afraid, one of the things they do is they look for solutions. And if the left isn't providing solutions, if there aren't strong socialists, communists who are saying this society needs to protect and defend working people and provide these radical things, then people look to other solutions. And that solution is fascism, right? That solution is blame the immigrants, blame Muslims, blame gay people, right? Take away rights from women, rip migrant children from their families. And so that is where we are right now, right? And the Biden and the Democrats have the role to play in that. But as I said, if we want to fight that, we need to use every tool at our disposal. And right now, that includes using the few rights that we have under a capitalist democracy: the right to vote, the right to the right to organize unions, right? The right to protest. And I've had a lot of arguments with people on the left, in particular people, right? Because I'm very strongly pro-Gaza and anti-Israel, right? I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not anti-Jew. Israel is a nation that is committing genocide. Being against that is not being anti-Semitic. It's sad that we have to say that, but that's the truth. A lot of people, right, are rightly outraged at Biden and the Democrats because they are arming and supporting genocide, right? But if we want to fight back, if we want to have protests, if we want to be able to organize unions and actually strike and actually have mass movements in the street without being slaughtered, right, by MAGA brown shirts, because that's what fascism does. It brings people with arms out onto the street to attack leftists and workers who are protesting. If we want to not have that happen, if we want to be able to protest, use our rights, then we have to keep fascism out of power, right? The other thing is, right, it's terrifying as well that Trump and MAGA have made advances with respect to people of color in the cities. Now, it's still small, but it is significant. And it's terrifying because when you look at what's going on in the southern states, when MAGA is in charge, they are working to get back to Jim Crow. They want to take away the rights that people have. And if you want a real good example of that, look at the special judicial district that they put into effect in Jackson, Mississippi, where the right-wing Republicans basically said that the city would no longer be able to control its own courts and its own legal system anymore, that was going to be imposed from the state, from the outside. And why is that? Because the voters of Jackson, Mississippi are overwhelmingly black, right? And so it's basically, they're showing that they want to go back to Jim Crow and take away the basic rights that we have. And so in order...
Sorry.
Yeah, just let me...
point out there was a water crisis in Jackson not too long ago, where very similar to Flint, largely caused by that dynamic of white, largely Republican racists starving public funding for these kind of things. There's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more discussion. I want to try to show a short video about Bolivia to show what it looks like when you really fight fascism, because I think it's instructive. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Okay. So let me just share this quickly, and then we're gonna have to go straight to the debate. I know they don't start on time, but I want to try to, have it up and make sure that it's working. Oh, also, before we get any copyright strikes, we're using the public broadcasting system, PBS's feed. So fuck CNN, and we're not giving them any money. And other than that, we also have C-SPAN as our other go-to option. So in any case, let me get to the
Anthony,
I just want to mention something before you start the video.
Yeah, go.
With respect, because I may have come off as like some ardent Biden supporter, but I just want to mention that recently, in this past New Jersey primary, I live in New Jersey, I was a delegate on the ballot for the Democratic National Convention to go to the Democratic National Convention as an uncommitted delegate, which would have been a vote not for Biden, but uncommitted. To say that we are, it was a protest vote because we know that Biden is going to get the nomination, but it was to express our discontent with Biden and his policies, and particularly his policy of arming Israel when there's evidence of war crimes going on, overwhelming evidence of war crimes going on.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make it clear that I am not some ardent Democrat and Biden supporter. But go ahead with the video.
Gotcha. I think our coalition's followers on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter will know that you're not a full-throated supporter of Joe Biden and genocide. But in any case, let me play this video quick.
I mentioned this in headlines. In the afternoon yesterday, we saw some disturbing images coming out of Bolivia, I should say. Armored vehicles began rolling into the capital of Bolivia, ramming into the doors of the presidential palace. And the military tried to storm said palace. This is the second coup attempt since 2019. The first one was successful in overthrowing Evo Morales, and you may recall that's the one that Elon Musk was a big fan of, that coup.
We'll coup whoever we want.
Yep. This time, leftist president Luis Arce actually thwarted the attempt. He's the successor to Morales. And this is him basically confronting here Army General Zuniga. And in this moment, it looked like it was out of a movie here.
I mean, a pretty amazing, turn of events, because it was very hairy. All of a sudden, they're surrounding the palace, and people called for a mobilization into the streets, and it immediately showed up.
Right, exactly. So this is the moment that we'll see here, and you'll hear me translate what's being said, where Arce and Zuniga went face to face in front of the palace, and Arce just stared him down. Withdraw all these forces immediately. That it's an order. It's an order. General, you're not going to obey me? Basically, he came out and went face, as I mentioned, looked him dead in the eye, and that image has been circulated everywhere, which I think is really a good thing for Arce, because it's bold and brave, and people in the area have an understanding of what happens sometimes to presidents and leaders who have clashed with the military. They have died. They've sometimes been killed. And so after that happened, basically, as it was becoming clear that the coup attempt was happening, Arce called upon protesters and trade unions to mobilize, and they basically immediately did, to try and stop this coup. This is the Secretary General of Bolivia's Trade Union Confederation. And this is immediately after where he said, announced his intentions to help stop the coup and mobilized other members of the Confederation. We declare the indefinite general strike from today. Also, the movement of all social movements and unions to the city of La Paz to defend and restore constitutional order and our government that is legally established in Bolivia. Revolutionary truth in the face of reactionary lies.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here and try to get to the debate.
John.
Yeah.
I think you have an echo because you have both your mic and Adina's mic.
No, she's not on the stream. She's not on the stream right now.
Oh, all right. There's some sort of echo. I don't know what it is.
All right. Hold on, I gotta find out what's going on with the stream. Actually,
Can I comment while you're looking for that?
yeah. Well, I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Just quickly, you know, what this shows is the power of workers and social movements when they're moved by the millions. And here they were defending against a coup.
Yeah.
But MAGA is a movement as well, not of mostly working people.
Right.
And it can be dangerous against us, and we have to be prepared for that.
Are you? Hold on. I'm gonna put it in again. Sorry. Sure.
Closing statements.
Are you
There
seeing
is
it now?
no studio audience tonight.
Okay,
Pre-written
what are you
notes,
saying?
props,
Okay, good.
or contact from campaign staff are not permitted during the debate. By accepting our invitation to debate both,
John, if you turn off your mic, does the sound still play from the thing?
Now, please welcome the 46th President of the United States.
No.
You hear it?
When you turn off your mic, I think it goes off.
Okay, so then I'll leave it off.
And please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Damn it.
John, the sound is really bad from my end.
All right, I can hear it. I don't know. Anthony, can you hear it? Anthony, can you hear it?
Maybe he stepped away from the thing. Yeah, I can't hear any of the.
Let me just change. Let me just. I'm trying to share this one. Can you hear it now?
It's very muffled. I can hear you, but I feel like the sound isn't coming directly to the thing.
I don't know. Hold on, let me just see if I can play it on my. I'm gonna try to play it on my phone.
Thank you, President Trump. We had the greatest economy in the history of the country.
Hold on a second.
COVID, and when we did, we spent the
Can
money
you hear it now?
necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in
Yes.
1920. Yeah. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce back jobs, a bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you. President Biden?
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. I mean, he's the only one who thinks that, I think. I don't know anybody else who thinks he's the greatest economy in the world. And, you know, the fact of the matter is that we found ourselves in a situation where his economy, he rewarded the wealthy. He had the largest tax cut in American history, $2 trillion. He raised a deficit larger than any president has in any one term. He's the only president other than Herbert Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant in the military, you know, when he was president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
President Trump, I want to follow up if I can.
Am I allowed to respond to him?
Well, I'm going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure that that doesn't drive prices even higher?
Not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made a statement. The only thing he was right about is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down and then they bounced back. And he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was probably the worst administration in history. There's never been. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, I was getting out of Afghanistan, but we were getting out with dignity, with strength, with power. He got out. It was the most embarrassing day in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt. Well, so far, President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to about the vaccine. And he did a very poor job, just a very poor job. And I will tell you, not only poor there, but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent. All of the things he's done, we've become like a third world nation. And it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, he got $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they've raised $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with look.
Oh my God!
If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
He's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning, the court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex, but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices.
That's just a lie.
And they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this and getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan,
Donald
I
Trump
believe
is for
in
Jim
the
Crow,
exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected. The problem they have is they're radical because they will take the life of a child in the 8th month, the 9th month, and even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia,
same old lies.
He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know if you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states, let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. And the idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, you talk about that. But here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters. It's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
What is his?
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened it up, and these killers are coming into our country, and they are raping and killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't. But they would have done. Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it. And again, this gives it the vote of the people, and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
Staying on the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states, I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions on how far into a pregnancy a woman can obtain an abortion. Do you support any legal limits on how late a woman should be able to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. First time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor, between the woman and the state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician should be making that decision. A doctor should be making those decisions. That's how it should be run. That's what you're going to do. And if I'm elected, I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
So that means he can take the life of the baby in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Indiana, we put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it.
All abortions that are done late are done for only for extreme medical reasons.
And kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen, Democrat or Republican.
But Biden is not coming across looking very well.
That is simply not true. That Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only if a woman's life is in danger, she's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion, period.
The Roe v. Wade, you have late-term abortion. You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years. And it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away. What's he going to do? What's he going to do, in fact, if the MAGA Republicans, he gets elected, and the MAGA Republicans control the Congress, and they pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board, at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. You significantly increased the number of asylum officers. Significantly, by the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened, I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we can do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we have the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to.
Actually, people weren't coming because the economy was so bad under COVID that people were leaving.
Terrorists. Yeah. We're the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America.
Says the biggest terrorist
we come from the Middle East, everywhere, all over the world. They're pouring in.
Did migrants try and overthrow our democracy and constitution on January 6th?
Because I didn't have legislation. I said close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it. And people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming out.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything across the border is one who came along and killed three, under his administration, killed an Al-Qaeda person and his administration, killed three American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there. I'm not saying that no terrorists ever got through, but the idea of emptying their prisons, we're welcoming these people. It's simply not true. There's no data to support what he said. Once again, he's exaggerating, he's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed three people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the two greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world. And it had a huge impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with a bad border, including hundreds of thousands of people dying, and also killing our citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state.
Immigrants.
We don't have borders anymore.
Commit violent crimes on average less than American citizens.
Ridiculous, insane, very stupid policies.
Violent crime is actually down.
Killing our citizens at a level that we
crime is historically down across the board. You know what the source is? The FBI.
They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen before. And you're reading it like these three incredible young girls over the last few days. One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and they just had the funeral for this girl, 12 years old. This is horrible what's taken place. What's taken place in our country, we're literally an uncivilized country now.
Yeah, we're a shithole country, huh?
He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast, because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street.
So yeah, we are.
Oh, is Donald?
Our veterans. He doesn't like the
Wait a second. Donald Trump cares about veterans?
He doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody worse.
Captain.
John, the sound went way down. I can't.
They abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down at less than half, because all these great things that we did, and I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by allowing all of these people to come in. And it's a very sad day in America.
Does anybody think that Trump cares about these people who are victims of supposed immigrant crime?
Veterans are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the back. 1 million of them have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And he opposed, his group opposed that. We're also in a situation where we have great respect for veterans. My son spent a year in Iraq, lived around next to all those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery, World War I cemetery, he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker, you're the loser.
President Trump?
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that up. He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We had 19 people that said I didn't say it. And think of this. Who would say?
His own chief of staff said that he said it.
Because nobody's taking it better. I'm so glad this came up. And he brought it up.
What did he have Roger Stone say he didn't say it?
Better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing on your side who was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one.
Yep.
Number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. And they now are in their family. The only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families and equip them when they go to war. That's what we're doing. That's what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
Topic of foreign policy. I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its 3rd year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst commander-in-chief, if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. Well, let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president who was respected by
get reelected,
he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead right now. Much more than people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe triple those numbers. He did nothing to stop it. In fact, I think he encouraged Russia from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. That when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned.
So he was going to stop the war in Ukraine by being Putin's bitch?
No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take this was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas.
Oh my God.
You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke.
So
they had no money
you,
for Hamas.
Right?
They had no money for anything. No money for terror.
That's why they were bribing you with fucking Mar-a-Lago.
During my administration. This place, the whole world is blowing up under him.
President Biden?
I've never heard so much malarkey in my whole life. In fact, we're in a situation where, let's take the last point first. Iran attacked American troops, killed or caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it. Recently, not when he was president. They attacked. He said they're just having headaches. That's all it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack took place, number one. Number two, we got over 100,000 Americans and others out of Afghanistan during that airlift. Number three, we found ourselves in a situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine, this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, do whatever you want. And that's exactly what Trump did to Putin, encourage him, do whatever you want. And he went in. Listen to what he said when he went in. He was going to take Kyiv in 5 days, remember? Because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. Wasn't able to get it done. And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
President Trump,
I never said that.
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory in Ukraine.
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything like it. Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
You have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he has made one thing clear. He wants to establish what was part of the Soviet Empire, not just a piece. He wants all of Ukraine. That's what he wants. And then you think he'll stop there? You think he'll stop if he takes Ukraine? What do you think happens to Poland? What do you think of Belarus? What do you think happens to those NATO countries? And so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies have produced as much funding for Ukraine as we have. That's why we're strong.
Thank you. Moving on to the Middle East. In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza. So what additional leverage will you use to get Hamas and Israel to end the war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one, everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan they put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one, they're the only ones standing out. We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened?
Even Israeli analysis says Netanyahu wants to continue the war.
Was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot
Why
of
the fuck did you give it to them, you
provide Israel all the
scumbag?
weapons they need and when they need them. And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in the world. And so they're 2 different things. Hamas cannot allowed to be continued. We continue to send our experts and our young people as to how they can get Hamas.
They go to a
like we did
negotiation
Bin
and
Laden.
they tell one
You don't
side of the
have to do it.
negotiation to commit
By the way,
suicide.
they've been
That's great,
greatly
great
weakened,
statesmanship,
Hamas.
isn't it?
Greatly weakened, and they should be.
Very likely
It
to
should
happen.
be eliminated. But you've got to be careful for what using certain weapons among population centers.
Just going back to Ukraine for 1 second. We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them? So you got to put up your money like I did with NATO. I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian.
Trump
but they don't like him
truth.
because he's a very bad
Alert the
Palestinian.
media.
He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
I've never heard so much foolishness. This is the guy who wants to get out of NATO. You're going to stay in NATO? He's going to pull out of NATO. The idea that we have our strength lies in our alliances as well. There may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe. What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine and then move on to Poland and other places. See what happens then. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And by the way, I got 50 other nations around the world to support Ukraine, including Japan and South Korea, because they understand that this kind of dislocation has a serious threat to the whole world peace. No major war in Europe has ever been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to follow up, would you support the creation of an independent Palestinian state in order to achieve peace in the region?
I'd have to see, but before we do that,
He'll get back to
the problem
you.
we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European
He
nations.
changes the topic every time
Because if
Palestine
you
comes
add them
up.
up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have. But we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia? At a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of
Sounds like
dollars
his
came
conversation
flowing
with
in the next
Zelensky.
day and the next months. But now we're in the same position. We're paying
It was a
everybody
beautiful
bills.
call.
Let's turn to the issue of democracy. Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your
Why shouldn't you be
supporters
in
that
prison,
day,
motherfucker?
some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the constitutionally mandated counting of electoral votes. As president, you swore an oath to, quote, preserve, protect, and defend, unquote,
He
the
didn't read that
Constitution.
either.
What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming
It was a
through, very
beautiful
few.
border.
On January
No one
6th,
ever
we were
seen it.
energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership is horrible, including weaponization, which I'm sure at some point you'll be talking about, where he goes after his political opponent because he can't beat him fair and
Oh
square.
my God.
You have 80 seconds left.
Which
My
he says he's
question
going to do
was, what do you
immediately when
say
he's
to
elected.
those voters who
He's going to
believe
go
that
after
you
all his enemies.
violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi,
You know the fuck he did.
She's a fucking liar.
on tape to
He
her
said,
daughter,
"Go to the
the
Capitol."
documentary filmmaker.
Fight like hell.
He knew they were
She's
armed.
saying, "Oh no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down." And the mayor of, in writing, by the way, the
I
mayor
can't believe he's
of
telling this same old lie.
DC, they turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see.
Straight finish.
After he incited the riot, he says, "Oh, by the way, I'll give you some officers to clean up the mess."
You know what? That's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, "You gotta have
He said,
some
"I'm right behind
National
you,"
Guard
and
or
then he was
whatever."
never seen again.
And I offered it to her, and she now admits that she turned it down.
He wanted to go.
The same day, she was,
Yeah.
I don't know, he can't be very happy with the daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, "I take full responsibility for January 6th.
When are you going to take responsibility for it?
Look, he encouraged those folks to vote for Democrat, number one. I sat in the dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. You know, they've been convicted. He says he wants to commute their sentences and say that, no, he went to every single court in the nation. I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court. They said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail, and they should be the ones that are being held accountable.
Why didn't you
And he
put him
wants
in
to
jail,
let them
you
all
stupid
out, and now
motherfucker?
he says that he loses again. So he is. You have bloodbath.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
What they've done to some people that are so innocent.
So innocent.
Oh, God.
You destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down
Were those the ones that
many
hit
other
the
cities. You go to
police
Minnesota,
officer with a fire
Minneapolis,
extinguisher and
what
killed
they've done
them?
there with the
Is it
fires
those good
all
people?
over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of the
Why didn't you bring on the National Guard on January 6th? Where were they?
Exactly. He's in charge of the National Guard. He's the commander-in-chief. He didn't need Pelosi's approval. He doesn't need anybody's approval as president.
Peacefully patriotic. One of the things,
Peacefully patriotic.
the unselected committee.
It's so much fucking lies that are easily disproved.
Gone now out of office. Democrats, all Democrats, they destroyed and deleted all of the information they found because they found out we were right. We were right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to jail.
Thank you, President
Trump. No,
President
clearly
Biden, I wanna
not.
give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon, this man I'm looking at right now. And the fact of the matter is, what he's telling you is simply not true. The fact is that there was no effort on his part to stop what was going on. And
He incited the riot in the first fucking place.
deserves to be convicted. The idea
Why
that
didn't
they
you?
did
Why didn't
kill
you
somebody
prosecute him? You
just went in and
fucking
broke down
coward.
doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned over desks, turned them over statues. The idea that those people are patriots, come on. When I asked him the first two debates we had, the first time around, I said, will you denounce the Proud Boy? He said, no, I'll tell them to stand by. The idea he's refusing to, will you denounce these guys? You denounce the people we're talking about now? You denounce the people who attacked that Capitol? What are you going to do?
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After a jury convicted you of 34 felonies last month, you said if
I
re-elected,
feel like Biden's responses are just not sharp because he's not sharp mentally.
members of the select committee on January 6th going to jail. Your main political opponent is
he's coming across as a grandpa.
Exactly what it means.
You know,
about feeling you have every right to go after political opponents.
Well, I said my retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. When he gets a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon.
Wow,
at a very
that's your
high level.
comeback?
His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably
Yeah,
numerous
he's
other
not getting
times.
the pardon,
He should have
though.
been convicted before, but his Justice Department.
His son's never had a government position.
Most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could
He's
be a
not running for
convicted felon
president,
with all of
dickhead.
the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion.
Are we trying to change the topic there, Mr. Felon?
Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I have to say that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor having to do with his son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond? Go ahead. I'll give you a minute to respond.
The idea that I did anything wrong relative to what you're talking about is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two, the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before. No president in our history spoke like that before.
He's right.
Three.
Well, Nixon behind the scenes.
So think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public, for doing a whole range of having a porn star on the night while your wife was pregnant?
Oh shit!
What is even on? Number one. Number two, that was a case that was started. They moved a high-ranking official at DOJ into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor ranking Democrats.
I love how Trump is, the MAGA's about personal responsibility, but when it's Trump, it's like, oh, it's never me. It's always the judge. It's the prosecutor.
But when the public,
He's not even supposed to be talking about the prosecutor. He's violating the gag laws.
But when they found out about these cases, phone numbers went up way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that his political opponent is going to win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, quote, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republicans are determined to destroy American democracy. Do you believe that the tens of millions of Americans who are likely to vote for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases on the road coming around. He's got a whole range of issues he has to face. I don't know what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, did you ever think you heard any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Did you ever hear any president say that I thought he had some good ideas? But Tom, after my son had died, I decided in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again. Until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas on torches, and singing the same anti-Semitic bile they sang when they were back in Germany. And the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him, they said, what do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What American president would ever say Nazis coming out of fields carrying torches, singing the same anti-Semitic bile, carrying swastikas? We're fine people. This is a guy who says Hitler's done some good things. I'd like to know what they are. Good things Hitler's done, that's what he said. This guy has no sense of American democracy.
President Trump.
Jake, both of you know that story has been totally wiped out because when you see the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on that. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville.
He's never had a case where he was exonerated. What is he talking about?
He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency is, without question, the worst presidency in the history of our country.
No, that's you, buddy.
We should be having
that would be the Trump presidency.
He made up the Charlottesville story.
Might be Herbert Hoover, but
All over the place.
No,
And
Trump.
the anchor has to every reasonable.
How did he make up the Charlottesville story? It's on video. You could just go right on your computer and Google it. He says it's
He was
fine.
debunked that he said very fine people.
And he didn't run because of Charlottesville.
Very fine people on both sides. That was debunked. They have him on fucking tape.
Yeah, I mean, how does he say he was making up that story? This is Trump's MO. You know, when you call him on some shit, it's fake. It's fake news, even though this video. But his supporters will believe him. It's fucking crazy.
Carrying those torches, and he did deserve to be president. Didn't deserve to be president at all. And the idea that he's talking about all this being fabricated, we saw with our own eyes. We saw
exactly.
Yeah. We saw the people breaking through the windows. We saw people occupying his own vice president. Look, there's a reason why.
Yeah, his own vice president.
Cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president has endorsed him this time. So why? Why? They know him well. They serve with him. Why are they not endorsing him?
Thank you, President Biden. We're going to be right back with more from the CNN
All right,
presidential debate.
I'm gonna pause this. Hold on a second.
Yo,
Hold
I
on
think
a
it's
second.
like half of his cabinet has decided not to endorse him. When has that ever happened?
Oh, my bad. Hold on a second. I just wanted to keep the live stream on so that when we go back, we can get to it easily. Go ahead. You had the floor. Yeah.
No, I was saying that half of his cabinet hasn't endorsed him.
John, can you try muting yourself?
Okay. All right. Hold on. I'm trying to find the debate so that it'll sync up with the audio. Okay. 1 second. Go ahead. You guys can continue speaking. I'm trying to. Okay. Here we go.
There's a really bad echo when Anthony was speaking. Now when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna deal with it right now. Okay.
Yeah, I said half of his cabinet hasn't endorsed him for his re-election. That is something that's unheard of. His own vice president is hesitant to say whether or not he will endorse him. You know, and from what he was just saying just now, it's insanity. He's like, he made up the Charlottesville story. It's on tape. You could Google it. You could go on your computer right now and Google him, and you'll see him saying exactly what Biden said he said, that there was fine people on both sides. You know, you had Nazis, neo-Nazis carrying torches. This shit is insane. He's called for a unified Reich when he gets reelected. This is straight up Nazi talk.
I mean, the other thing too is, I'm sorry. The other thing too is that like the right bust people in. It was Charlie Kirk, the same people who are supporting Project 2025. They literally bust people in from all over the country, and they came armed, and they knew they were armed, and they transported them anyway. So the idea that he didn't know is ridiculous.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time, so I want to just be quick on a couple of things, right? I think, we're seeing on one side, we're seeing Trump like just lying nonstop in what he's saying. I think Biden has done a fairly good job to call him on his stuff. On the other hand, Biden is coming across as not that coherent. He makes some points, but I think he is showing his age significantly, and I think more than Trump is. We've seen a lot of Trump speeches where he's been much more coherent, well, much less coherent, and just trails off into stuff. Maybe we'll see that later. I don't know. Maybe they hopped him up on cocaine. I'm not sure. Right. But one thing I want to do is really important, right? Talking to people who are very pro-Gaza and anti-genocide. I think one thing that kind of got covered over, John, could you mute your mic? I think really important is that I think it was Trump. I may have heard wrong, but I don't think I did. That Trump was more honest about it, saying that Israel didn't want peace and it wanted to finish the job, and that that the U.S. should let it finish the job, meaning complete the genocide and kill tens of thousands and starve hundreds of thousands more people. Am I right on that? I just want to make sure because it kind of happened quickly. So.
I think he said that Israel wanted to finish the job. I don't think he said we should let him do that. He was made. We got to go back to the. Okay, sorry.
Term. President Biden.
Can't hear anything. Can't hear you either. Is that me?
Blacks and moderates and more small black businesses that have been started at any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporate races that collude to keep people out of their houses. In addition to that, we find that the impact on the choice that black families have to make relative to childcare is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was able to reduce black childcare costs. I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for childcare costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those childcare protections, you increase economic growth because more people can be in the job market. So there's more to be done, considerably more to be done. But we've done a great deal so far, and I'm not letting up, and they know it.
You have 49 seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example, I provided for the idea that any black family first-time home buyer should get a $10,000 tax credit to be able to buy their first home so they can get started. I made sure that we're in a situation where all those black families and those black individuals who provided had to take out student loans that were ballooning, that if they were engaged in nursing, anything having to do with volunteerism, if they paid their bills for 10 years on their student debt, all the rest was forgiven after 10 years. Millions have benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you, President Trump.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right, it's been very bad. He caused the inflation. And
inflation was global. Every country experienced it after the pandemic.
It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food where it's doubled, tripled, and quadrupled. They can't live. They're not living anymore. He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect.
Yeah, during COVID, there was no inflation, right? You remember that.
Couldn't find toilet paper.
All this money that's being
thrown. Yeah, Captain Marty Combs
inflation. Basic supply and demand. If people weren't going out, there was no demand for certain things. And if people weren't going to work, there was a break in the supply chain.
Black jobs now.
Not only that, the people who support this motherfucker are the reason why inflation is high. Inflation is high because of billionaire parasites scumbags.
They took advantage of the situation.
There was no inflation.
And Biden's a failure because he didn't do anything about it.
The economy was flat on its back. 50% unemployment. He decimated the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation at the time.
There you go. Decimated the economy.
Millions of jobs for individuals who are in all communities, including minority communities. We made sure that they have health insurance. We have covered, if the ACA has increased, I made sure that they're $8,000 per person in a family.
And yet Trump is right that people are struggling with inflation and Biden hasn't taken that on.
Sure, absolutely.
And they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing anything, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for equity and making sure people have a shot to make it. There's a lot going on, but in inflation, he caused it by his tremendous malfeasance in the way he handled the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent challenge is the climate crisis. 2023 was the hottest year in recorded history, and communities across the country are confronting the devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump, you've vowed to end your opponent's climate initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police.
So your answer is no, he's going to let
Close
the world
police
run.
are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump.
Yeah.
Almost every police group.
Because a lot of
And
them
what
are
he's done
racist,
to the
just
black
like you.
population is horrible.
Fascists flock together.
Super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name. And he called it to them, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening.
And you don't see them
But
as
when they
super
see what I
predators,
did for
you
criminal
lying
justice
motherfucker.
reform and for the historically
Captain
black
N-word on their
colleges and
applications for
universities,
housing.
where I
You
funded them and
scumbag.
got them all funded.
President Trump, Central Park 5 is online too. They'd like a word.
It was incredible. He did a great job.
What was that?
Great senator from South
The
Carolina.
Central Park 5 is online too. They'd like a word.
It was one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country. Opportunity zones.
And he
And
never
the biggest
apologized
beneficiary are
after
blacks,
calling
and
for them to
that's
be
why
murdered for
we
a
have
crime
the
they didn't
best
commit.
numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever the best numbers. He's lost
Don't believe the hype,
much of the black
motherfucker.
population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air, and we had it. We had H2O. We had
With
the
coal.
What the fuck do we have now?
We were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental ever. And my
When he
top
pulled us out of the
environmental people
Paris
gave me that
Climate Accord,
statistic
right?
just before I walked on the stage, actually.
But he wants to gut the EPA. And he said the climate crisis is a Chinese hoax.
I passed the most.
Tell that to Florida for the last couple weeks.
Legislation in history. In history, we find ourselves. And by the way, black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he's claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing with the environment. He, out of the Paris Peace Accord, Climate Accord, I immediately joined it, because if we reach 1.5 degrees Celsius at any one point, there's no way back. The only existential threat to humanity is climate change, and he didn't do a damn thing about it.
Other than Trump.
All that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff of the United States. And
So you negotiated a better
because
deal,
I didn't
right?
want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But
With
everything
that
now,
response, he shows that he lacks an understanding of
for the seniors.
what even the word climate
He's destroying all of our medical programs. Migrants coming in, they want
He has
everybody.
barely spoken about the climate the whole
biggest
fucking
part of the
question.
stage, I guarantee you that.
Oh, he has the biggest black heart.
We're destroying our country.
The biggest
They're
white
taking over our
supremacist
schools,
heart.
our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
every single budget that Trump submitted contained cuts to Medicare and Social Security. In the 4 years
He says he's going to slash Medicaid in Project 2025. We say they're going to gut it. They're going to give block grants to the state.
One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making significant progress. By 2035, we will have cut pollution in half. We have made significant progress, and we're continuing to make progress. We set up a climate corps where thousands of young people will learn how to deal with them, just like the Peace Corps. And we're moving in directions that are going to significantly change the elements that cause pollution. But the
Nowhere near enough.
He has the biggest heart up here, and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate, I've not seen any indication.
Biden, if he says he has a heart, put a fucking stake in it. Okay?
Prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one, voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay. And by the way,
so every day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans,
Trump not had his
Social
mic
Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social
How about
Security
taxing the
solvent?
fucking rich?
the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share.
Thank you.
Everybody making under $170,000 pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck.
Make this motherfucker pay on every dime he makes.
18 years old. The idea that they're gonna, I agree proposing that everybody, they pay, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%. So no one after, not raise the cost of Social Security, anybody under $400,000 after that began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security?
You don't need any other measures other than
that
that.
one enough.
Well, that one enough will keep it solvent. But the biggest thing I'll do is we defeat this man because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare both times. And that's what, and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he supports is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing
How do you get from 400
allows them
million
to have that
to
insurance
40,000?
is the fact that they in fact are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is we're in a situation where I talk about education for Black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants, another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 towards the tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years.
No answer.
I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face.
Are you looking? Is he looking in the mirror when he says he lies?
The laptop,
Amazing how
Russia, Ukraine. And everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation.
Even Pinocchio has to be blushing with this level of
Losers
fucking
and
lying.
sucker story that he made up is a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it because millions of people are pouring into our country and they're putting them onto Social Security. They're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid. They're putting them in our hospitals.
Well, they put them onto Social Security.
They don't. That's just they're undocumented people work and pay into Social Security and don't get it.
And these people are living in luxury hotels.
By the
He
way,
doesn't know what
quick
he's
fact,
doing.
you know how much the U.S. government
It's really
saves
coming back.
because
I've never seen
immigrants
such
pay for
anger
Social
in
Security
our
that they
country
don't get?
before.
$17 billion a year.
He acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired. He's the one who's.
You notice that I have to say, Biden, they asked the question and Biden gave a single policy item as an answer that would solve the crisis. And Trump didn't answer the question.
Yeah.
Where he talks about it. Illegal aliens are coming into the country and taking away our jobs. There's a reason why we have the fastest growing economy in the world. The reason why we have the most successful economy in the world. We're doing better than any other nation in the world. And by the way, those 15 Nobel laureates he talked about being phony, those 15 Nobel laureates, economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted for him the worst president in the history of the United States of America.
Let's turn to the cost of child care, which many American families struggle to afford.
I still think it's Hoover, but
Biden have tried to address this issue. but the average cost of childcare in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of childcare for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make childcare more affordable?
What are you doing this first term?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said
he can't leave us alone.
I didn't say it, and they're very
can't help
highly respected,
himself.
much more so than him. The other
Captain
thing is,
Reasons.
he doesn't fire people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI.
He wants to fire everybody.
Like it's the fucking Apprentice.
Pay a price for it.
Yeah,
They were
pretty
no
much.
good.
This was insane.
They didn't tell me that. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show. The most embarrassing moment in the history
He was
of our
for
country.
it. He was
He
for
didn't
getting
fire-
out of
did you fire
Afghanistan. What
anybody?
is he complaining
Did you
about?
fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people?
Did
many
anybody
from
get fired for not
prisons,
building the
many
fucking
from-
wall, you clown?
Mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He's the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And
Oh, there you go.
Happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is.
Says the January 6th leader.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden?
We're the most admired country in the world. We're the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity. We're the finest military in the history of the world, the finest in the history of the world. No one thinks we're weak. No one wants to screw around with us. Nobody. Number one. Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online. 159 or 58, don't hold me the exact number, presidential historians. They've had meetings and they voted who's the worst president in American history. One
it's
from
not
best to
close.
worst. They said he was the worst in all of American
I don't
history.
know. Hoover was pretty bad.
That's not conjecture. He can argue they're wrong, but that's what they voted. The idea that he is doing anything to deal with childcare. He did virtually nothing to childcare. We should significantly increase
Children
the
died of
child
COVID
tax
because
credit.
Captain
We should significantly
COVID.
increase the availability.
How many people did he
of women
infect,
and
this
men
motherfucker?
or single
How many
parents
people
to
are
be able to
dead
go back
because
to
of this
work.
piece of shit?
And we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President.
Well, with respect to COVID, both of them did a lot of bad stuff.
Oh, Trump did way more.
We have polling. We
Way
have
more.
other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad. And they rate me. I'll show you. I will show you. And they rate me one of the best. Okay. And if I'm given 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the
Who's
best.
doing this poll?
Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut
I
taxes
just
like
Googled it. Nobody's rating him at
Nobody
the
wants to
top.
raise your taxes.
Nobody.
He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants to.
He's going to use a mark. He's going to use a black Sharpie marker and fill that in.
Nobody ever heard of
Like
this
he did with the hurricane.
Politicians talking about cutting taxes. When we cut
I
taxes,
swear to God,
as
he
I
should
said,
get fined
we
every
did
time he
more
says
business.
nobody ever
Apple
heard
and all
anything
these
like
companies,
this before.
they were
It was
bringing
the best
money
economy
back into our
ever.
country.
He should have to pay a fine for
The
that.
worst president in history by far, and everybody knows.
President Biden?
Everybody knows it. He always says that.
Yeah.
He's increased the tariff. He will increase the taxes on middle class people. I said I'd never raise a tax on anybody making less than $400,000. I didn't. This tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say? That's going to cost the average American $2,500 a year more because they're going to have to pay the difference for food and all the things that we're importing. Number two, he's in a situation where he talks about how he has not raised, he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a new tax cut of $5 trillion over the next 10 years, which is going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You have the largest deficit of any president in American history, number one. Number two, you have not, in fact, made any contact, any progress with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden. Let's discuss an epidemic impacting millions of Americans that both of you have made a top priority in your first term, the opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has
Are they talking about Ronnie Jackson?
It went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
And how much fentanyl was done in the White House, by the way?
We now have the largest deficit in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China.
How much drugs does your son, Cokehead Donnie Jr.
Candidate. He gets money from China. So I think he's afraid to deal with them or something. But do you notice he never took out my tariffs because we bring in so much money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country. And he's got the worst,
about deficits, really?
The worst situation with China.
Really?
China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before.
Nobody knew.
In every
Who
way.
knew?
And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border where it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen.
He brought in Roscoe, the sniffing dog.
The addiction is due to oxycodone, which was made by U.S. manufacturers, particularly the Sackler family.
That I believe is even low because they got away.
What's the name of the company again?
But the
I'm trying to
numbers
remember.
of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women.
Was it Merck?
Because he cares about our women.
At numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had.
They're being trafficked by American citizens. That's the number one way in which they come into the country.
Fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl. These big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money. That was part of this deal we put together, this bipartisan deal. More fentanyl machines, more be able to detect drugs, more numbers of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines.
It's a fucking terrible bill.
We're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about
Biden's solution is Trump's policy implemented.
This does pertain to it. He ended remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always
just like they paid for the wall, right?
Yep. Right. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter. I think a good guy, and he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office, I said.
So what is the conversation between you and Putin? Does he just say, "Come here, bitch," and kneel? Is that what he says?
He should have had him out a long time ago.
Very, very great call.
Billions and billions of
Nobody ever heard a call like
that. Every time. We had 2 cases where we paid $6 billion for 5 people. I got 58 people out.
Why isn't his mic cut off for not being on topic?
Right,
Let's
they've never done
concerns
it.
that voters have
They've never
about
cut his
each
mic.
of you. President Biden, you would be 86 at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person.
Nobody said that in
ever
40
elected to the
years.
United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger, a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me. As I said, 15 million new jobs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, more investment in America, over billions of dollars in private investment in enterprises that we are growing. By the way, we brought an awful lot of people. The whole idea, computer chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it because he was sending people to find the cheapest jobs overseas and to bring home a product. So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here in the United States, and guess what? Those fabs they call it to build these chips. Those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them, and there's billions. About $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. Never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us. All of our allies and
Biden's going to Pinocchio mode.
Up to from Kim Jong-un, we sent love letters to, and Putin, etc. They don't want to screw around with us.
It's a replay of 2016 where
To follow up,
Hillary Clinton said America's already great.
Yeah.
What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Don't worry, I'm taking enough drugs. I'll be all right.
Both of them, as you know, we made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through
Let's
the
get
first
a
5
top
questions.
screen on you, motherfucker.
But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year.
You don't need a cognitive test for you. You fell on your face
We
repeatedly.
have wood that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be.
No,
able
you
to hit
just
the
have to
ball a long
bribe
way.
the fucking
And I do it.
officials.
He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a
Look at
shape as I
Biden.
was 25, 30 years ago. Actually, I'm probably a little bit lighter, but I'm in as good
Would
a
you cut
shape.
down
as
on
I
the
was.
fillet?
A little bit lighter.
Very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced it. Dr. Ronnie Jackson.
Oh my God, the drug
great guy.
pusher
He was
who
quite
gave him the
instructive,
fucking
and then I
test.
took another
The
one,
guy who
similar
got
one.
his son high on
And
coke.
one
He
of them
took
said
the
they'd never
test.
seen
And you're gonna
anybody
believe
ace.
that? Jesus Christ, Ronnie Jackson.
I can't hear.
Well, anyway,
He's closer to 300
just take a look
pounds.
at what he says he is. And take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. When I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to 6.
What the fuck are these guys even talking
By the
about?
way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf. You can carry your own bag.
Jesus Christ. Can we hit one of them with a golf club?
That's the biggest problem. He's a 6 handicap of all.
I was 8 handicap, 8. But I, you know, I mean,
Jesus
I see you
Christ.
swing. I know you swing.
Okay,
Let's not act like Joe.
President Trump, we're going to
21.
Let's not act like
Cut his fucking mic off, jerk off.
that voters have about you. Will you pledge tonight that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, and that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
You won't.
We'll say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable.
You're asking the repeated fucking criminal a question about crimes he already fucking committed.
And if you see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, And also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. And I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election
I
was
am a
fair,
fascist and I tried to overthrow an election.
I wish he was a great president because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying myself. I wouldn't be under indictment because I wouldn't have been his political appointment.
The only way you're staying out of prison is running for president. You fucking lying piece
Because I
of
was his
shit.
opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that.
What a
I
fucking
wouldn't be
lying
here.
douche.
I don't mind being here. The only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going
We
to make
have no
America great
choice.
again. We're going to make America great again.
Did he answer the question?
Seriously,
No, he didn't.
And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His
Make
military
America hate
policies
again.
are insane.
The
They're
hamburger.
insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive
We have
us into
plenty
World
going
War
with you being
III.
a fucking doormat.
You want a World War III?
But he didn't answer the question.
Follow and win.
Of course he did.
Say do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all. The required response. The idea. I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with
Why
John
isn't
White.
Biden hammering him on the fact he wouldn't answer the fucking question?
Powerful nation.
Jesus Christ. Wakey, wakey, Joe.
Not me, it's because of the American
Yep.
people. They're capable of anything and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because our own safety is at stake. And again, you want to have
Nobody
war,
gives a fuck about
just
NATO,
let Putin
Joe.
go ahead
Talk
and
about the
take
fucking
Kyiv,
insurrection,
make sure
moron.
they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that border. Then you have a war.
President Trump, as I come back to you for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of
And
this
you never
election,
fucking answered the
regardless of who
question.
wins?
Just to finish what he said, if I might,
Jesus Christ.
Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew
Because you
not to
fucking
do
gave it to them.
Not going to play games with me. He knew
Yeah,
that.
they're
I
gonna
got
play
along with
games
him
with you.
very
I'm
well,
sure they're
but he knew
fucking
not to
terrified
play
of me,
games.
bitch. Get the
He
fuck
took
out of here.
nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this with, he's got us in such a bad position right now with
Make
Ukraine
him
and
answer
Russia.
the fucking question, you
Ukraine's not winning
moron.
that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people.
Who the
They're
fuck is
running out
running
of
this
soldiers.
debate?
They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are
Anything
1,000
but
years
talking
old,
about the
all because of
insurrection,
him
right,
and
bitch?
stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I
Which
would have
is
much
no,
rather
of course
accepted these.
Yep.
But the fraud
All you have to do is say yes.
was ridiculous. If you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week. Or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than
But we have no
running
choice,
again. I
right?
wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did.
Oh my
He's destroying our country. I would be
Is there
very
anybody in the
happy to
world
be
that believes
someplace
this
else in a nice
motherfucking lie?
location
Motherfucking
someplace.
lies.
And
Come
again,
on.
no
Tens of millions of people do.
opponents, because it's
And there
I
aren't.
know,
she
but
can
I'm
win.
saying, you gotta,
Unfortunately, it's
I mean,
driven up
really,
by
you have to
numbers and
deny
driven up
any kind of slave.
Let's see what the numbers are. This election is real. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost, you continued your appeal all across the country.
He's gonna cry
Not
the
one
entire
single
election.
court in America that any of your claims had any
That's the only thing Biden has going
state
for him.
or
He's gonna
local.
whine and
None.
cry
but you continue to promote this lie about somehow there's all this misrepresentation, all this stealing.
Got laughed out of
There's
court
no evidence of
60
that at
plus
all.
times.
And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea that you lose again, you accepted anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
Ouch.
We'll be right back with more CNN presidential
How
debate.
long is this
live
debate?
from
Huh?
Georgia.
It's already an hour and a half. Are they going 2 hours?
I don't know.
Wow.
C-SPAN
All right,
now
I'm gonna
is a
mute it
mobile app featuring your
temporarily.
unfiltered view of
so
what's
that-
happening in Washington.
Washington.
Keep up with the day's biggest events with live streams.
Okay, I forgot that I had a lower up. All right, so I'll keep an eye on it and we'll let you know when they're going back live. But we can have some commentary in between. Can we put the video on, guys?
Yeah, I was eating. I didn't want people to watch me eat.
What's that?
You gotta, John, you gotta mute yourself.
How can I mute myself? We're gonna have a conversation. How does that work?
You have to mute yourself until you speak because there's big echoes. So, all right. Well, I'm just going to say that I think this debate sort of encapsulates pretty perfectly late stage capitalism. You've got sort of a weak centrist Biden who's sometimes coherent, sometimes not. And then you've got a completely dishonest, delusional fascist who is, he's spewing his MAGA line. He spewed the Great Replacement theory. I think I heard him say that he wanted Israel to finish the job in Gaza. We'll have to check on that. And tried to deny the whole thing about supporting the Nazis and the murderer in Charlottesville. So it's pretty, I'd say, demoralizing. But I think Biden has gotten a few good hits in there. He's also been places where he's been pretty incoherent.
Yeah, I mean, I think Biden had got better as the debate went on. Like the beginning of the debate was really bad. He was constantly losing his train of thought and stuttering and all of that. But I thought like after about, I don't know, the first 20 minutes or so, he got better in terms of responding. But one thing is the moderators have just been terrible about getting them to fucking answer a question. Like Trump went all around the world in 80 days to avoid answering the question about fucking whether he would accept the results of the election. And, they just let him do it. So, I mean, I just think the format really lends itself to Trump doing what he does. And I just think that Biden's focus on everything and anything and everything except the most important points about democracy, about the insurrection, about the fact that he's a felon and been indicted for all these crimes, and wants to run. The only reason why he wants to run for president is to keep himself out of jail. That's it. It's so he can continue to get away with all the crimes he's been committed, not only when he was president, but before he was president. Anthony, go ahead.
Yeah, it's disappointing that Biden isn't focusing on the fact that Trump, he's calling the insurrectionists patriots. I mean, he's not really hammering Trump the way he needs to hammer him.
The debate's back on. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, put it back.
It is last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system.
I'm guessing this is
I ask
closing
anyone
statement.
out there in the audience or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said nobody even making under $400,000 had a single penny increase in their taxes and will not. And if I'm reelected, that will be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation because of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America. What I did, for example, he wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug pricing with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need. You know what that did? That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices. I'm going to make that available to every senior all along where it's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of that. I'm going to make sure that we have child care. We're going to significantly increase the credits people have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country. We're going to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all the stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason
My taxes went up.
because I cut the regulations.
Yeah, so did mine.
But
So
he's
did the
putting a lot of
Dinas.
those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something.
Yeah,
You
if you
sign
got
the
the money.
document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up.
Yeah, it was an
and
excuse
take
to
care
cut
of
the
themselves,
Veterans
and they're
Administration.
living, and that's why I had the
Fucking
highest
scumbag.
Yeah, what was that?
in the history of the VA.
TRICARE or something?
All of these things, we're
Right
a
to
failing
try.
nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Look up Vote Vets. It's
Thank
an
you.
organization of vets that is totally against Trump.
Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
All right. Let me just lower the volume here and stop sharing. Okay, so that's dabba. That's all, folks. So in any case, we're gonna wrap it up with some political analysis of what's going on. We started some of it with in the break. So who wants to speak first?
Well, I gotta hit the old hey. So I'll
Yeah, I know a lot of
give
us.
my quick analysis of this.
Yeah.
You gotta. It's the echo, John. Yeah. Okay, that's better. That's much better. It really is a terrible choice. I mean, and what this should let people know, especially working people, working class people, people in our union, is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We really don't have a party that represents working class people. And a lot of that has to do with the role of money in politics. And you could look at what just happened in Westchester and in the Bronx with Jamal Bowman. You know, over $20 million spent on one House seat in a primary, not even the general election. And it was moneyed billionaires and a lobby group, AIPAC, that spent that money. We were bombarded with throughout the region. I thought that Bowman was running and Latimer were running for president. As many ads as I saw for Latimer all over the place. He bought front page ads in local newspapers, full page ads. Every single piece of media you saw this guy's ads. And the reason why we don't have much choice is because the Democratic Party is beholden to that same system. Even when you have people like Bowman who try to buck the system, AOC or any of these others that are out there, they still have to raise money. It's very difficult to compete that way. But with this, getting back to the particulars of the primary here and what we're dealing with now, Trump is full of shit, to put it bluntly. I mean, and everything that he said that he did, you could Google it and see that he didn't do it. From drug interdiction, from immigration, to what caused inflation, why the economy tanked underneath him, his response to COVID, which was horrible. I hope nobody out there injected disinfectant or tried to shine light, UV
ultraviolet
light
light
in their body to get rid of COVID or anything like that. It's like everything. Charlottesville, I mean, it's easily looked up, and you could see that he was lying. There was very little mention. I don't even think Project 2025 was mentioned in that debate at all. I didn't hear it. And it's very important that people understand that this is what they want to do, and it's been their goal ever since before the ink even dried on the Civil Rights Act. It's been their goal to do what they're trying to implement in Project 2025. A lot of things have changed since then, and I think what a lot of it is, when I talk to people, a lot of people take it for granted that the things we have now will always be there. And people should look at what happened. They should take Roe v. Wade as kind of like a litmus test, as like the things that we take for granted that are always there. Like, we take it for granted that we're going to have Social Security, that we're going to have Medicaid, that we're going to have Medicare, that there's going to be some sort of safety net, unemployment insurance, all of these things, every single thing that you could think of. Even the EPA, when Trump talks about he had the fewest regulations, this is what he's talking about. He sat in front of a group of oil executives just recently and said, if you give me $1 billion for my campaign, that I will roll back all of the regulations that Biden put in place since he's been in office. And this is how, this is what I'm saying, is that people need to Google these things and not listen to what this guy just said on stage, because it was just completely full of shit. Completely full of shit.
Yeah. Seth, if you want to speak.
Sure.
I want to try to keep Seth. I want to try to keep it to by 11. We want to be off. So
okay.
Okay.
What?
What are you laughing about?
You're implying that he's long-winded.
Seth, I didn't say you were long-winded.
It's 10:44. You mean he's going to speak for 16 minutes?
Clearly, members know.
I think he's saying the whole live stream.
But he's 16 minutes before 11.
Yeah. In any case, so yeah, I mean, I think the debate was pretty sad overall. I think, John, you got to mute yourself. I think Trump, like all, right, and I don't say it lightly, I don't think that the Republican Party 10 years ago was a fascist party, but Trump and MAGA and January 6th showed it, and I gave a lot of other evidence why we're in a different time than we are now with respect to the possibility of state repression and rising fascism, right? Trump, as a fascist, right, he's going to create his own myths and his own lies that his followers eat up, and he did it over and over again there. And on the other hand, you've got Biden, who, I don't think he showed particularly well. I don't think I think he had a lot of missteps. I think he had some hits in there, but the fact that this is what the Democratic Party, he's what the Democratic Party is putting forward as some sort of counterbalance to fascism is terrifying. I think, like I said, it isn't about, for me, it's not about the people, right? I think fascism, MAGA fascism, represents a clear and present danger, and I think Anthony spoke well on that just now. That the dangers to Black people, to women, to LGBTQ+, to immigrants, to Muslims, to Jews, because as much as support for Israel, right? Israel doesn't represent all Jewry, and MAGA fascists, as we saw in Charlottesville, are very anti-Semitic as well. So there's a lot to fear, and so I have to be honest with it. I think that Biden's performance was mediocre, and I think because of that, there were a lot of points that he could have hit hard, and a lot of things he could have exposed that he didn't. But that's capitalism, and liberal capitalism has never been able to stand up to fascism very well, right? It's our power that stands up to fascism. But the question is pretty simple. I think when you look at the record, when you look at the dangers, will we be able to protest? Will we be able to strike? Will we be able to form unions under Trump? What will the dangers be with respect to immobilized millions of people who are racist and violent and following Trump and Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon and Alex Jones's every word? It's pretty dangerous. And we have, Biden is no solution. The Democrats, like the Republicans, are our enemy. However, even with his poor performance, the basic politics still stand, which is that I don't want to see us go back to Jim Crow. I don't want to see LGBT people killed by far right mobs. I don't want to see when I take my family or want to take my family out to protest against genocide in Gaza. I don't want to be attacked by a far right combination of MAGA people combining with far right Jews who support the genocide and support Israel's policies. Right? These are all things that, if you look at the history of fascism, when you look at the history of movements like MAGA in this country, around the world, that these are all things that are very likely and can become real if someone like Trump is allowed to take state power. And because of that, I think that there is a choice in this election. Joe Biden is the enemy, but he is not a clear and present danger like Trump is. Trump is an existential danger to working people, people of color, and oppressed people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be honest that the debate performance was very underwhelming from Biden. But Trump was so all over the map with the lying and the crying and the whining and the insane narcissism and all of that, that it kind of balances out, I think, in terms of what people take in, unless you're already trying to be for one side or the other. I don't think the debates are going to be the determining factor in who wins the election. But Biden, I thought, missed 1,000 layups, 1,000 easy, hit the ball out of the park moments. And when he wouldn't answer the question about the insurrection, when he wouldn't answer the question about whether we would accept the election, Biden should have jumped all fucking over him. And he's an idiot for not doing so. Part of the problem is that Biden has to face the fact that there's collective amnesia in this country about how fucking bad Donald Trump really was and how many people died because of this motherfucker and how cutthroat and bloodthirsty he is in terms of pursuing his personal and political power hungry drive. And the media doesn't do an effective job on this. They just want the show. They just want to create this both sides bullshit and equate you know, every idea is just another idea. You know, the ideas of Trump and his MAGA fascists, they aren't just ideas. They're inciting racist violence. They are inciting destroying democratic institutions. They're inciting turning back the clock on all of our rights in order to create a fucking paradise for billionaire parasites like Peter Thiel and the rest of them. And you know, this with the stakes so high, the fact that Biden missed so many opportunities to actually push back and to expose Trump was really bad. But yeah, so
You finish up, and then if you have some.
I mean, I think overall, though, like we all have so much riding on this election that has nothing to do with Biden and the Democrats. It has to do with our own lives and what they're going to look like if Trump and MAGA fascists gain the power of state control again. And given the fact that the lessons that they said they learned about the first time not being as successful as they wanted it to be are in Project 25. They say it openly, what they plan to do. Like, we really need to educate ourselves. How the fuck did Biden not bring up Project 2025 the entire fucking debate? Why don't you talk about the names of the people who are behind this? Like, it's so stupid. So since they won't, we really have to. And we really have to start taking trips out to Pennsylvania and Ohio and other places and talking to working class people. Because believe it or not, people vote in elections not based on what the candidates say, but who has an impact on them based on who are people who are credible to them that they will believe. And we have to try to fill that vacuum. And we have to try to fight back against the only voices being heard is Biden and Trump and all of these social media influencers and fucking billionaire propaganda machines and in the media. And it's not just the CNN, it's not just the mainstream news media, it's 1,001 YouTube shows that pump out right-wing propaganda and gaslighting talking points. It's Elon Musk, it's Twitter, it's all of these institutional bad actors who have a harmful effect on people's consciousness more on an outsized way than they would ordinarily based on the actual fundamentals of the election. All right. Yeah, Anthony says 7 minutes. So does that mean you want to speak? Does that mean you want to speak?
No. I mean, you know, but
he says he don't want to speak, and then he speaks. Anthony, come on, make sense.
One thing in Project 2025 that wasn't mentioned either by us or by or on the stage just now is what they want to do with government workers, and that they in Project 2025 they have a plan to fire over 50,000 government workers in key agencies and replace them with Trump loyalists. And they don't, in the wording, they don't necessarily mention Trump, but they loyal to a conservative president.
Yeah.
And they're training people now and identifying people now. It's like this is straight from the fascist Nazi playbook. It's what's been done historically when a democratic nation becomes fascist. They use legal means to get in. And then when they get in, they change the law to make sure that you can't get them out.
Yeah.
And they want to basically revamp the entire government apparatus. You know, you have these people talking about, you know, Blue Lives Matter, and then they're talking about defund the FBI. But if you delve into what they want to do in Project 2025 with the FBI, and they want to remove certain people and certain departments within the FBI, like they want to fire the lawyers that are in the FBI, and they want to make the FBI focus, in their words, on violent crime, which means it won't be focusing on white collar crime or any political crimes or any
right wing. They won't focus on right wing terrorism.
Exactly. They won't focus on right-wing terrorism. But when they say violent crime, what historically has that meant? So they're going to change the FBI to a government sort of Stasi, which would go after, you know, the opposition groups to right-wing fascism. So the FBI, when you talk about violent crime, they'll be focusing on your minorities. They'll be focusing on trade unions, because
shithole cities.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I wouldn't put it that way. I'm trying to, you know, explain to people that they're going to focus on all of the organizations that historically have been for working people, working class people, poor people, black people, Hispanics, and anybody that is not a right-wing fascist. So, and they're going, this is what they're talking about. When Trump talks about weaponizing the government to go after political opponents, it's written right there in the people who are behind him, who created Project 2025, that they have a plan to weaponize the government, an actual plan outlined on how they're going to do it. And this is what they're going to do. Yep.
You know, the other thing too is that there's a famous quote that when a person tells you who they are, believe them. I'm trying to remember who that quote is from. Somebody can help me with that in the comments. Maya Angelou, that's what it was. And when somebody goes through 920 pages of a blueprint to gut your civil rights and your democratic rights and your trade unions, and the largest attack on unions in this country and the history of this country, believe them. Take it seriously. Especially when the people who are telling you this are the gun nuts, are the ones who are armed to the teeth with semi-automatic machine guns. When they tell you they're coming for you, believe them. And you know, the thing is that you don't have to love Biden. But if I have a choice between having to fight in the streets in a battle that we are not prepared for, just look around working class communities. Are we prepared to go toe to toe with white supremacist militias and all sorts of heavily armed reactionary right-wing scumbags from upstate? Are we prepared for that battle?
Backed up by the police.
Backed up by the police and the military. In the case of Trump being in power, he will weaponize the military in that way. Do you want the military gutted and stacked with only cronies and ass kissers of Donald Trump? We really have to think about how people think it's the worst it could possibly be now. And we really have to drill down on the fact that that denies and defies our own history. We know that's the case, that there have been much worse times in the world. There's a much worse time in Gaza right now. There's a much worse time in, the Congo right now. The idea that America in this particular time frame is the worst it could be and it couldn't get any worse is really insane. And it's really disconnected from reality. And we have to deal with the fact that people who ordinarily would know better are brain broken by what they've been through, the experiences and the crisis they've been through in the last 2 or 3 years. And we have to begin to educate ourselves about how bad things can really get if we allow this motherfucker to gain the reins of state power, because it's not just him gaining the reins of state power. It's every heavily armed white supremacist asshole who he inspires with his every fucking word. And we have to do whatever we can, no matter how small you think your vote is. We have to use whatever weapon, whatever tool we have to defend ourselves before it's too fucking late. Okay, further comments?
Yeah, I want to follow up. I appreciate your comments, both of you. Particularly about right. I've gotten into discussions with people. I just want to say, right now, Biden is losing. Right, the chances of Trump being elected president right now are pretty high. I would say probably like 60 to 70%. And that's pretty terrifying, right? And I think, like John was saying, so the problem with late capitalism that we're in now is that whoever's president, right, is in charge of people's lives getting shittier. That's what the world we live in right now. Most people's lives are getting worse every year. And as much as the Democrats talk about Bidenomics and all that, for working people like us and people who are in the gig economy, delivery people, Uber drivers, it's worse and worse and worse, right? And so when Trump says that things are bad, it resonates, right? That's what right-wing populism and fascism feed off of. But his solutions are to attack migrants, to attack gay people, to attack women, to attack black people, right? Those are fascist solutions, right? Those aren't real solutions, and the Democrats aren't providing real solutions. The only people who can provide real solutions are masses of working and oppressed people organized into revolutionary parties, right? But we're not there. That's not where we are right now. But I get into conversations with people who say Biden's a fascist, that we're all living under fascism now, right? That is completely disconnected from history, right? Capitalism and imperialism are brutal and oppressive, and they have been since their beginning. But fascism is a very particular movement, right? It's an armed right-wing, far-right movement that mobilizes to smash protests and any sort of resistance from working and oppressed people, right? And MAGA has made it clear that that is their goal, right? So if, the stakes are high, right? It can't, right? Jim Crow is an example of a period in America, right? Even though they're being taken away from us, there are 150 years of rights and workers' movements and movements of the oppressed, like civil rights movement, that have given us some ability to fight back, to form unions, to protest, right? And those things, they want to take those away. And if we have those things taken away from us, our ability to fight back and to organize movements will be much and much harder. And we have to hold on to those things. And that's why, even though, right, Biden and the Democrats are genocide supporters, it's a bitter pill to swallow, right? But the vote isn't about endorsing them and saying that that is right. It's about a fight for survival at this point. And if people don't see that, right, then you have to wake up. If you go back to the Weimar Republic in Germany in the 1930s, right, the left was very strong, but there were divisions among the different parties there, and they did not unite together to stand up against fascism. And that's one of the reasons why Hitler and the Nazis were able to take power. Right now, I'm not saying that Biden is part of the left. I'm not saying that, but we have to, at this point, we're even in a worse situation. We don't have big parties, socialist and communist parties like they did in Germany, right? That actually were in the government. We aren't in that situation. We are in a very dangerous situation. And if we can't see that, then we are going to be taken over. And when we go to try and strike, they will be out on our picket lines beating us up. When we go out and try and protest against the genocide, we will be smashed like the campus movement at UCLA was. Everyone should go and look at that, right? Because that is an example of what will be every day, everywhere when we try and protest, right? At the UCLA encampment in the middle of the night, fascists, a combination of Israel supporters and far-right people, went in and beat the crap out of the protesters. And the police stood by and did nothing because they were on the side of the right wing. And then 4 or 5 hours later, the police went in and arrested all the protesters, not the people who were committing violence earlier, right? That is what we will see every day, everywhere, in every city, right? If Trump is enabled and MAGA takes power. And that's why I want to put out a plea. I think we had a fair number of people watching. If you're a working class person, right? As much as you can hate Biden and hate the Democrats and know that they're supporting and arming genocide, right? The stakes in this election are high. It's not like, Romney versus Obama. It's not like Gore versus Bush, right? This is a different period. January 6th showed that. The increase in right-wing terrorism and mass shooting shows that we are at a different time in this country. Fascism is on the march, right? And if we cannot stand up to that, we will be smashed. So I encourage people who are watching to get in touch with Local 100 Fightback, right? We plan independently to try and tell people what the stakes are, right? I'm not a Democrat. I have not been a Democrat for a long, long time, right? But in this election, I know what the stakes are. And people should reach out to us. We need to go to places like key elections in New York, key elects go to Pennsylvania, and we need to start talking to people about what it means if Trump takes power.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. Reach out to us.
Yeah, please reach out to us. And also, you know, when people talk about like they'll never vote for Joe Biden, think about it this way. If you don't vote for Joe Biden, are you so sure that you'll ever have a vote again? That there'll ever be a Democratic election in this country again? And if you don't, I mean, just look at his answer tonight. So the question of whether he would accept the results of the election. That's all you need to see to know that this man has no intention of ever allowing any kind of democratic elections or ever accepting a result that goes against him. And the Democratic Socialists of America, wake the fuck up. Where are you? Where are you in doing exactly what we're talking about? Going out and having real conversations with working class, going out to trade unions and to people's houses in swing states and trying to swing this election in the only direction that can save our democratic rights, that can provide a real future for any kind of democratic rights that we would recognize in this country. So the left has
John,
to.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
I think your statement about never having an election again is, I understand the point of it, and I think there's a point there. I think realistically, 4 years of Trump and state power, possibly putting more Supreme Court justices in, right, can change things so that even if we hold an election, right, the ability of Black people and working class people to actually have their vote heard will be so diminished, as per the Viktor Orban or Vladimir Putin books, that we will never, right, they'll have a completely encased minoritarian rule that we'll have a vote, but we won't be able to get them out of power.
No, we'll have elections, but it'll be the kind of elections that Putin holds. Yeah, I know. I agree on that.
We're already 7 minutes over. But
I know. We gotta wrap up.
But I want to add this to what we were just talking about, where you were talking about minority votes and elections. He's already shown it in the 2020 election.
Mm-hmm.
It's already been done. I mean, he refused to accept those results. He filed frivolous lawsuits all over the place. They actually are being sued by makers of voting machines because for libel and slander because of what they said about these the unreliability of these machines. They actually took the machines from Arizona and actually investigated and looked through these machines one by one. A sham investigation, and they didn't find anything. They're trying to replace the Secretary of State in key swing states because during the last election, he tried to get the Secretary of State in Georgia and in Arizona to change the results of the election. And if you look at the places where they were focused, where they said there was fraud, it was in all of the urban areas where you had a large Black population: Atlanta, Phoenix, Philadelphia. They said that all of these areas and numerous others, Detroit, every place they went where they said there was high fraud was in the Black areas. Mm-hmm. They've already, the Republicans have already succeeded in pretty much gutting the Civil Right, the Voting Rights Act. Now states that once used to have to get approval before they change their laws no longer have to. And what they did immediately after that was they changed the laws to make it more difficult for poor people, Black people, rural people to be able to vote. They've done this. It's already been done. It's not something that's theoretical. It's not something that. But if Trump gets reelected, this will go into overdrive. They'll start completing the process, and they'll do other things to make it more difficult for them to get out of office. Like they'll change the laws as far as like election laws. Maybe they'll federalize elections instead of them being state. And they'll make it so that that it favors them. They've already done this in South Carolina with the gerrymandering laws, in North Carolina, in several different states. They've already done this. So it's not something that's theoretical. It's something that's already been, and this is something that they've been planning on. and that they've been working on before the ink even got dry on the Voting Rights Act and on the Civil Rights Act. This is the culmination of decades of this.
Yeah.
Trump is not. It's not all about Trump. It's all about the in places like the Heritage Foundation. You know, it's all about, you know, what capitalism really is. And, you know, we've been deluding ourselves, and a lot of people are deluding because, you know, we have this kind of like soft brand of capitalism, but the only reason why we have this soft brand of capitalism is because people got out in the streets and fought. But they're coming for a hard, truly laissez-faire type of capitalism. When you talk about gutting regulations, the regulations they want to gut are the ones that give that empower working people, are the ones that protect poor people as far as the environment, as far as clean air and clean water. Trump is full of shit. He wants to gut the regulations that make sure you have clean air and clean water. And he's already tried to do it when he was president. He already did it. It's easily for you people to look it up, for anybody to look it up.
Yeah.
You know, but that's all I wanted to say to wrap things up, because I really got to go too.
Yeah, I know. We all got to go. And I'm sure our viewers got to go. But we'd like to thank the over 118 viewers that were watching simultaneously. It's important that we got so many people to watch, not only to watch the debate, but also to watch the before and after political coverage from a working class perspective. And I'm so glad that we did this. And we're going to be doing many more live streams and conversations about this election, the lessons of this election, but also reporting on the conversations that we're having with working class people. You know, I think it's important that we have somewhere we can go where we're not getting gaslit and prodded and poked to believe a bunch of lies about ourselves, but in which we actually can empower ourselves by hearing each other's voices, hearing working class voices in that way. And we'd like to thank you so much for joining us. And we know it's late. Sorry to keep you guys up late. And we hope to be talking to you real soon. Thank you so much for your time. Everybody have a safe night. And please continue in the comments. We want to hear from you. We want to hear where you agree, where you disagree. We don't have all the solutions, but we know the dangers. And we need to start to talk about the dangers. And we need to be honest with ourselves about how bad things are now and how bad they could be if we don't take the actions that we need to see. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.